Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting, Tuesday, December 3rd. Thank you for braving the snow to come out tonight. Looks like we have quite a few things tonight, so we'll start with the, we're going to have a discussion on the Charter Commission. Tentatively, we're going to meet with them, or some representatives of our board on the 16th. So I think we'll just move that to the bottom so we can deal with the other issues tonight, and then we'll speak about that afterwards. There are, I believe there's one bill and then a surety release. Paul, do you want to?
Sure. I just have one bill. It's actually a reimbursement for me for $35. I went to a training a couple of weeks ago offered by the Citizens Planner Training Collaborative, which I think I've sent their information out to you all, but this was on drafting zoning amendments, and I did this in anticipation that we will have a new village commercial district, but found it was very helpful. Again, I recommend people go to it. In fact, I know, Orrin, we went last year to their annual workshop, so I always take classes that are applicable to what we're doing or will be doing, so that's what that is.
Okay. And looking for the final release on bond for Mary Jo Estates.
All right, so this is, Mary Jo Estates was a subdivision approved 4 or 5 years ago, and there was there was about $28,000 remaining in the surety that Mr. Bottomley had paid for the construction of the roadway itself. So the Keith Silver, the highway superintendent, Chris Carmichael, the building commissioner, and I have all gone out there, looked and confirmed that it included, it met the specifications for the roadway. We were all satisfied with it, so we're just recommending you give me the authorization to ask the town treasurer to release the remaining funds, which again is about $28,000. She had just recommended that in the letter, it just said release the remaining surety, so that way she'll know to.
Just curious, when we do that, do the abutters get notified of the request to get it released in the subdivision?
We do not, no. So I think here all I'm asking for is an endorsement to approve submitting a request to the town treasurer for the release of the remaining funds.
This had been before us more recently than 4 or 5 years ago, I remember. And there were some issues that I think the highway superintendent had, but those have been addressed. I'm not sure if I have anything further.
Do you remember anything about it?
I just remember the project. I assume if the highway superintendent went out and looked at it and he's satisfied, then I'm not going to second guess it.
We also did a release about a year ago, excuse me, for the landscaping and loam and seeding
might have been
for
what it
it.
was.
Yeah.
So this closes the surety out for this project.
All right.
Is this part of a subdivision plan?
Mm-hmm.
And were there any other requirements, like an as-built plan that's required to be submitted, anything else?
They did provide us with as-built.
Okay.
All right. Without any further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the release.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Has everyone had a chance to look at the invoice for Paul, the $35 for the fall workshop? Without any questions, I'll look for a motion to approve that as well.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, we have some minutes. We have October 29th and we have November 12th, so let's go with the 29th first.
I had one question, I guess, which I wasn't sure made sense to you via email. On the first vote regarding remote participation, should Julie's vote actually be an abstention, or is she technically even present at the meeting at that point, since remote participation wasn't a thing?
I don't believe, it was the question on the vote for the remote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think did you vote?
I don't think I
don't
did,
think you
because I
did.
think you guys had to vote to allow me to.
We had to vote to allow you to be
remotely
on.
Participate, so although I wasn't here physically, I was on the phone, I didn't participate in the first vote, and then I think after that, you guys welcomed me to the meeting because it passed.
Right.
Yeah, because
And
we
I
had voted to,
participated in the rest.
we had voted to approve it previously, but not the specific wording, so. Yeah, so she would have to be
I
not
think
present.
that's right, Tim, I think I abstained.
Yeah, but you probably
Yeah,
more
and-
not present.
Because you're listed as absent at the top, so that's why it's,
Yeah, oh, I see, okay.
so I was trying to,
Yeah, I would think it would be not present for that vote.
and adjust the end of the introduction. As you were here, it was kind of a Schrodinger's Bach kind of thing.
Yeah, I was absent. She was here by remote.
Yeah, remotely.
Yeah.
By teleconference.
I telecommuted to the meeting.
It's the future.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any other changes, corrections on here? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
All right, and the November 12th meeting minutes? Everyone had a chance to look those over? Do we have any questions, corrections, changes, additions?
Just under board comments, the third bullet, that was correct, but I think I added a comment saying that, that being the case, there is still the ability to ask the applicant to give up some space to widen the street to accommodate bike paths.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything additional? All right, hearing nothing, I'll look for a motion to approve with that correction. Or, I'm sorry, with that addition.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right, moving right along. We get into the public hearing. We have SP 486. And I guess it's SP 491. We're going to combine these, or are we going to?
You can combine, one's a continuation in this.
Yeah.
And the other is, you're now opening it, but it's obviously part of the same application. But
Okay.
that's, the application that, the new one is the application that came about after the town meeting vote that requires
Okay.
a special permit for the gas station and underground, with underground storage tanks in Zone 3 of the drinking water protection zone.
Did time periods change with a special permit? I don't know whether we get further comments.
I was going to question whether 486 should be withdrawn.
Yeah, that's what my initial question was, too. that might be up to the applicant if they,
Well, they still need two special
Yeah.
permits.
They still need
Yeah.
2 special permits and the site plan.
okay.
I think we would, if you want to pursue it, we should ask town council about that.
Okay.
But they are required to have the special permit for the gas station, the special permit for the gas station in Zone 3, and then the site plan.
Okay.
So just continue them.
Yeah, let's keep them
Those-
as is, and
Okay.
we'll just make sure we do it the right way. That being said, welcome.
Great. Thanks for having us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Tom Reedy, an attorney with Bacon Wilson out of Amherst, here on behalf of Cumberland Farms and its applications for whatever order the board wants to take it, site plan approval, special permit for the underlying zone, and then also a special permit for the underground storage of petroleum and also the fueling in a Water Resource Protection District Zone 3. With me this evening, I've got a couple of engineers, John Marchand and Christian Farland from Farland Corp., and then also Maureen Schlebeck, who's our traffic engineer. So maybe just an update since the last time we were here. So we were here on the 12th, we primarily discussed traffic. After that, Maureen and her crew went back out, got some additional data, which hopefully you have had the opportunity to review. It was submitted last Tuesday. It was also submitted to the traffic peer reviewer. I think we sent in the check. I don't know, Paul, if you've got that, but there's an additional peer review that's required, and so they needed an additional check. So we don't have that peer review for the traffic piece of it yet, but we will have Maureen present to you this evening. We also, last time, we intended this evening to discuss stormwater, but we have not received that peer review back yet, or any comments to that submission. That was, for your record, submitted on November 5th. So we're up towards a month waiting for that peer review. We also, in the interim, submitted that special permit for the underground storage and fueling in the Water Resource Protection District Zone 3. With that application, we included not only the application, but also a letter from Webb Engineering, Bob Coluccio, who was in this room in the beginning of October, or maybe in September, and then over at the library in October. We did not bring him here this evening, but if the board does have questions, we can always bring him here on December 17th. We anticipate that this is going to get continued, especially because we don't have those peer reviews. And so this evening, we're hopeful to talk about traffic, as I mentioned, the site. And so what you also received last week was kind of an update of where we started and what changes we made to the November 1st, 2019 plan set. And we were also hopeful this evening of talking about any of those additional changes that we could potentially make. We don't like the engineers to have to redesign the site if we can help it. It gets tedious and costly. So if we can do it in one fell swoop, that's always the best practice. So hopefully this evening we can talk a little bit about the site and then the underground storage tanks as well, because what we've got, not only that letter, but I also have a memorandum, kind of the Cumberland Farms policies and procedures. We did receive this morning, a little before 10 o'clock, a couple of articles. I think one of the members had provided them through the town planner. And in response, we've got some best practices that Cumberland Farms does. We would agree to have them be conditions of the special permit. And it might set a good precedent for any future underground storage tank fueling stations that come along after. So with that, we're happy to get into any one of those three things. If you want to start with traffic, the site, or the underground storage, dealer's choice.
I'll open it up to the board. How do you guys, anybody have a preference?
I guess my only question, in terms of the peer review, is there something that the peer review is waiting for on the stormwater? You're not sure, or?
No, everything, we have a signed contract, we do have a check for it, it's just, has a number of other projects he's working on, and in addition to reviewing this, so.
Okay.
But everything is with the peer reviewer at this time.
Can we get an ETA and when to expect that back?
Yeah, I'll-
So
Thank you.
I remember that was
there's an issue with
consistent,
previous.
consistent discussion with Blue Star, and I prefer not to deal with that again.
Since that might be the most hard to follow, perhaps we can start with traffic and just get an update.
Sure.
I think we were going to look at, I think it was the, I thought it was the June
Fourth.
4th meeting.
Fourth, yeah.
And I just want to, I got the numbers, I've got now 3 different sets of numbers, and I'd like to understand where they are, maybe we can get some clarity.
Sure. So I'll turn it over to Maureen, but I guess one thing that I would ask from the board to help move this along, if you can take notes during, so that at the end of this, I can kind of get a homework sheet of everything that we have to do, just so, as, if we can make next meeting our last meeting, not that I don't want to see you, that would be great, or at least maybe 2 more, just so we can start to whittle that list down. So that would be my request, and without more. Maureen.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Maureen Schleback with McMahon Associates. So I'm going to just pick up from the additional study that was done. We talked about the whole traffic study last time, and I'm happy to take questions on any of it. So there are a number of things that have been looked at since the last meeting. The first request was to look at our study area again and consider expanding it. So we did expand the study area to include West Main Street at Mansfield Ave and Taunton Ave, which is about 0.3 miles east of our site. We collected counts at that intersection on Tuesday, November 19th, from 7 to 9 a.m. and 2 to 6 p.m. What we found for a peak hour at that intersection in the morning was 7:15 to 8:15. As you may recall, in our traffic study, the system peak in the morning was 7:30 to 8:30, so pretty close in time. In the afternoon, we found the peak to be 4 to 5 p.m., and previously our network peak was 5 to 6 p.m. So to be conservative, we did use the actual peak of that signalized intersection in the analysis that we provided to you. We also seasonally adjusted the counts upward by 2.5% since November is a lower than average month. We also provided some information on the hourly distribution of traffic on Route 123. And what we did is there was a count station nearby, and we could get the count data from MassDOT. The roadway generally peaks from 7 to 9 in the morning and 2 to 6 in the afternoon, which I know you all know, you will not, and you're not telling me anything I don't know, but I just bring that up because we are concentrating on those hours, so I think it's interesting to note that during those non-peak daytime hours, the traffic is around 30% less. So, outside of the peak period, we're talking about quite a bit less traffic. And so, going back to the Route 123, 140 intersection, because the north and south legs are offset, the intersection acts as 2 clustered signalized intersections. It's actuated, uncoordinated. It has 5 vehicle phases and concurrent pedestrian phasing. We took the traffic volumes at that intersection, we projected them ahead to 2025 traffic conditions in the same manner that we did in the prior study, which was 1% growth per year for the background traffic. And we included the traffic that's expected from the Blue Star Business Park. With that, we conducted capacity analysis of that signalized intersection for each of the peak hours. And again, we're looking at the year 2025. So when we compared the no-build condition, which is without Cumberland Farms, and the build with Cumberland Farms, we found that overall, in the morning, the overall level of service is C. And as I probably have said before, level service is a measure of driver delay under a given set of roadway and traffic conditions. It's ranked A through F, and typically D is adequate. You're not really designing for A. You're looking for D or better. So in the morning peak, looking ahead under the no-build, the overall intersection would operate at C under the no-build and D under the build. In the PM peak, it operates at level service E under both no-build and build condition.
Where are you finding that? Is that page 4 of your report?
So there's a table in the supplemental report that shows all those levels of service.
I'm looking
It is
at
on
page 4 of
page-
8, and I don't see a C. Oh, overall C?
Yeah, it's page 4. So if you go to the 2025 no build in the morning, the very last row shows an overall level service C with a delay of 30 4.4 seconds. And then when you go over to the build, you'll see it's D with a delay of 35.8 seconds. So we just crossed that threshold by 1 second. There are some movements that operate at level service F, as I'm sure you know, particularly in the morning peak, it's the southbound movement, the left through movement. And in the afternoon peak, it's both the westbound through right and the southbound left through.
Now, in that schedule, you just have greater than 80, and then you go greater than 80.
Yeah, so what happens with level service is when you reach level service F, it begins to grow exponentially. So it's hard to predict the actual delay. So we typically, when we're summarizing it, we'll just say it's level service F, it's greater than 80 seconds delay.
It's
On
basically,
those.
it's really bad, we're not going to bother calculating it.
Well, it grows unreasonably exponentially, so it's harder to predict, and it can become an unreasonable number. So we generally, you're over capacity on that leg, on that particular movement. And I know that intersection has been problematic for the town for quite some time. That was studied in your village study, and you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place in the fact that you need to realign that intersection, and you have a park and you have a church on opposite corners. So I feel for you on that intersection, but it is what it is. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. It's been that way for quite a while. So some of the issues that happen at that signalized intersection really come right down to the geometry, the off-leg, dog-leg situation that you're dealing with north-south. It's not an easy fix. So with that, I'll move on to some other topics. We were asked to provide the percent of traffic increase on Route 123 in both directions based upon the Cumberland Farms traffic. And in the peak hours, that's approximately a 5% increase from the new traffic of Cumberland Farms.
Can you tell us what numbers you used to get to that, please?
We used the new trips that were generated by the site. They were distributed to the street network. I believe in the original traffic study, there's a diagram that shows just the new trips.
Well, I was
So
looking.
let's let her get through the update first, and then we'll ask the questions.
Okay. We talked a bit about site distance at the last meeting, and the fact that there's 2 site driveways and there's an adjacent school driveway. And so I believe the discussion was kind of focused on whether or not somebody at one driveway could see another motorist emerging from a adjacent driveway. We went back out, we remeasured the site distance at the school driveway. We provided a graphic that overlaps the sight lines, and it shows that from each of those driveways, you can see the other driveways. Okay. Next, I'd like to speak about our queuing observations. We looked at queues on 123 in both directions. So when we were looking at the eastbound spillback at the project site, that would result from the signalized intersection at 140 and 123. And in the westbound direction, the spillback to the Cumberland Farms site would result from the school driveways. And as you recall, we had looked at that in June right before it closed and before school closed, and there was some talk about whether or not that was an adequate observation. So we did, when we looked at the westbound spillback, we looked at 7 to 8:30 a.m., and we found that 4% of the time, the queue from the school extended to our site. And in the afternoon, well, we did 2 different peaks in the afternoon. We did the 2 to 3 peak to cover the school traffic time. In that situation, only 2% of the time did the school queue, I'm calling it the school queue, but the westbound queue extend to the site. And we did not measure it up from 4 to 5 because the schools were not in session. So that really, and all those queues cleared in 4 minutes or less. It wasn't like the driveways were blocked for a long time based upon the school traffic. And I think some of that is based upon the people you have controlling the traffic out there.
Just for my quick math, so at peak in the morning, the queue was back to the site for a total of about 4 minutes or so?
Well, in the morning, we did a 90-minute, yeah.
90
So,
minutes and
right, so you're right,
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Something like that?
yeah. And that's not 5 consistent minutes, right? It's,
It hit there.
yeah, enough times to cumulatively hit 4%. The eastbound spillback, however, from the signal was higher. So in the morning, 24% of the time, it would have extended to the site driveways. At the 2 to 3 p.m. afternoon peak, when the school traffic is out there, it was 23%. Now, interestingly, when you go to the 4 to 5 p.m., where there isn't school traffic, it never extended back to our site. So again, I think that just speaks to the fact that we've got the school traffic and we've got this offset dogleg intersection signalized, and it's the friction of that school traffic going through this village area in those two particular peak times. We talked about providing a crosswalk mid-block that would connect to the senior center. And we've done a number of crosswalk studies for state agencies. So typically the resource we use is published by the Federal Highway Administration, and there's a resource called Recommendations for Installing Marked Crosswalks. The input variables that we used the average daily traffic on 123, which is about 16,000 vehicles per day, based upon a MassDOT count. We used the speed that we had measured for our original traffic study, which is 38 miles per hour, and the number of lanes on the road is another input. So the finding using those input is that a marked crosswalk alone is insufficient, and that pedestrian crash risk could increase with just a marked crosswalk. And I know that goes counterintuitive to what we all think, but the idea is, and the research that Federal Highway has provided, is that a crosswalk alone gives the pedestrian this feeling that they're safe, and they should be safe because everyone should yield to the crosswalk, but in practice it doesn't happen that way. So if you're going to just put a crosswalk out there, you usually need to add other things, curb extensions or RFBs or something, and also that you should have approximately 20 pedestrians crossing per hour to justify a mid-block crosswalk. And I don't think we have the pedestrian volume out there to support that. So those were our findings in this, whatever I'll call supplemental study. I know we've sent it to the peer reviewer and that they have not yet reviewed it, but in the meantime, I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Yeah, my question was answered about the queues, so.
So to answer your question, your recommendation is that this is not a suitable site for a crosswalk to the senior center based on projected pedestrian volume and the potential for injury?
You could potentially increase the pedestrian crashes by marking
For a plain crosswalk?
For a plain
Kind
crosswalk.
of light or anything?
Right.
Because it's a state highway, doing a light on it would be much more of a process.
Yeah, like the one in front of Honeydew.
Right,
There.
yeah.
Yep, that's a sidewalk in.
The ones in front of Wheaton are just on town road, not on
Yeah.
state
Right.
highway, so that's why they can do what they did.
And there's typically warrants for putting up a signal at a crosswalk. So again, you're going to kind of come back to the fact that you don't have the pedestrian traffic out there to justify the signal for it.
A couple of questions. You attached that site plan, I'm just not sure how to read it. There's like a red line going in either direction. Is that red line the actual view that you would have? So I'm looking at the starting point where the red line starts, it looks like where the
Yeah.
elementary school.
Right, that's the school driveway. So what we did is we color-coded each of the driveways.
Okay,
So
so,
the red line is showing you the site available from the school driveway.
so if I'm at that point taking a right-hand turn, can I see somebody coming out of the site's driveway? Or did I
Yes.
miss it?
Yes, you can.
The red line doesn't match up with that driveway. It's in,
Well, it's showing you the whole view shed that you have, that you're over 500 feet down the road, you
no,
can see.
you can see down, but I'm just trying to see whether or not a car coming out of your, I think it's I'm not sure east, west, south at this point. It's actually the southernmost driveway. So I got a car coming out at that driveway. Until that car is actually in the middle of the roadway, I wouldn't be able to see it? Is that what
No,
that
that's
says?
not what that's saying, no.
Okay, that's what I'm
And in fact, the people that went out to measure this, they were given specific instructions to see if they could see the other driveways. We did it on this side of the road, we did it on the opposite side of the road. I don't think that was asked of us, but we did it anyway, just to feel self-assured that all these people emerging in this area with these driveways could all see one another.
Okay, so it's not just the line, it's bigger.
Yeah, that's kind of like the view shed, so what we do is we draw the line from, there's criteria of how far back you have to be from the travel way, looking down the road, and then we draw a line to where the site is hindered. So that's why it's one line heading out, but it doesn't
Okay.
intend to mean that you can't see to the right or the left of that line.
I see. You talk about peak times, and just looking at this schedule, this is the Main Street schedule. I mean, they're almost like from 2 to 6, they're almost all peak. I mean, but for maybe 10 cars one way or the other, you got about 4 hours of peak time. Just one may be greater than the other. So there's the constant.
Yes.
And then the same is true with both the 7 to 9. They differ by not very much, the 7 and 8.
Yeah, what you typically see on a roadway is a 2-hour morning peak, a 2-hour afternoon peak, and 7 to 9, 4 to 6 is typically what you'd see. Here, the fact that you have the school and the school release, it extends the afternoon peak hour period. But, when you're outside those peak periods, you drop right back down in terms of the volume.
Okay. Now, in the thing you submitted on June 13th, and I guess you used there the DOT numbers, and those were taken sometime in 2018. But those numbers, then you put them, a similar schedule together, and those had actual numbers for the no-build and the build. And there at the high school, it went from 810.4 seconds delay to 884.7 seconds delay. And that's an increase of about 9% of your no-build to a build. There's an increase, the delay increases about 9% on top of 810.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but
And then similarly for the bagel and cream driveway, that went from 32.8 to 48.3, which is an increase of 46.6% as a result of your build.
yeah, let me just get to what you're reading.
That's an AM.
Yep,
That's
but again, I mean,
also accounting for increase year over year.
right.
No, that's 2025 to 2025. That's the same year. That's no build to build. You're going
The
from,
the build conditions include the year over year increases for the no-build conditions, correct?
Can you say that again?
The build conditions include the annual increases that you include in the no-build calculation?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
okay.
which page are you in that original?
This was page, they really.
I think he's in the
This
attachments.
is the
They're not-
capacity
yeah.
analysis summary for the weekday and morning hours. And then the other question I was starting to ask is, what numbers you were using for your percentage? I'm not sure, there's 3 different sets of numbers we have now, so I'm not sure what numbers you were using.
So if you look at figure 7 in the study, it shows weekday morning peak hour new project trips, and figure 8 shows weekday afternoon peak hour new project trips. So that, we compared those numbers to the volumes that are existing on the roadway.
Okay, so this is, I'm looking at this schedule now. So you're doing okay, so I'm looking at the schedule that says, I'm just trying to understand this, the weekday morning peak hour schedule. Okay, could you just walk me through what number I should be looking at to find out what you're doing?
Sure. So these
are
the new trips at the site.
Oh, you're not looking at this schedule?
So which schedule is that? Is that, that's not the updated,
This was in the appendix of the
Okay.
traffic memorandum.
okay.
So here's our new traffic, our new traffic trips. Right. And then what you'd have to do is look at that compared to the volumes on this stretch of the road under the no build. And again, if you want to see it graphically, if you look at 6 and 7, it shows you the new trips. So there's about 15 to 18 new trips. And
Is that in one direction, or is that both directions?
the 15 is about one direction. 15 new trips. We've got 18 new trips in one direction.
And what about the other direction?
We have 19.
So what number were you using? You had 77 new trips. You weren't using, because you had attached a schedule that was
Right, so-
the hourly, that broke down hourlies, and I was just comparing those hourlies to the 66, or 66 and 64, and I was coming up with 5.3 and 6.1%. So I'm trying to find out what you
So
got.
if you go back to the table on page 14, this is where you get into that
Right, I got
66 new
that.
trips.
So what are you using?
So that's 33 entering and 33 exiting. And they come, 50% comes from one direction, 50% comes from the other. So when you take that 33 and half of it is coming in one direction to the site, that's how I'm coming up with a number around 15, 16.
Okay, but,
So you come back to the microphone.
yeah, but it's only coming from one direction? You don't aggregate the two directions?
That number was split.
No, in each direction. So those 66 trips, that's 33 cars, because 33 cars enter the site and 33 cars exit the site, right? But it's 66 trips. So I think that might be what's throwing you. There's 33 new vehicles coming to this site.
Okay, the new vehicles, okay. But now,
Right.
we're also talking 24% of the time, the queue goes back beyond the driveway. So now, in addition to the new trips, you also have cars that are on that roadway that come in and then have to get back into that 24-minute cycle of backed-up cars. And I don't know how to account for that.
So I think this is some of the discussion we had at the last hearing as well, in that it's a convenience land use, it's a convenience market, it's a gas station. People are not going to pull in there if they can't get out. It's going to be a lot of routine patrons. They're going to know the best time of day to go there. They're not going to pull in there when they're going to be faced with a long queue from the signalized intersections. So in some senses, it does self-correct, and I can tell you examples of where we've seen that demonstrated in the traffic volumes for Cumberland Farms, where we have a heavy direction, dominant direction in a peak hour, and the entry vehicles drops right off during that peak hour. I always say, I don't like to say it in front of Cumberland Farms, but that's not when you're going to go to Cumberland Farms to get a gallon of milk.
Unless you rather get a cup of coffee than sit at the light, then.
Yeah. Then, you pick your poison, I guess, right?
I think, I'm sure if you have more questions, I think the supplemental look was very helpful, be looking forward to see it after it's come back from the peer reviewer as well.
Yeah, it answered a lot of the questions we had previously.
Thank you for
Does
letting me
anyone have any
present.
further questions?
Thank you.
I'm going to, just so anybody in the audience, I'm going to, however you prefer it, if there was questions on the traffic and everything, if anybody in the audience wants to ask them now, we can do that, or we can let them present, and then any questions, you can come up. So would anybody like to have a question now? Peter, come on.
Peter Wiggins on Mayor Norton. I frequent that place I frequent that part of stretch of roadway lots and lots of times. I walk through it, and the concern I have is the traffic going in and out near Honeydew Donuts and the senior center end. It is a dangerous section in which if an elderly person were to cross from Cumbies to the senior center to get a cup of coffee and then cross back, then it is a very concerning cause when you have traffic in the morning and traffic at night touring from Cumbies towards downtown and back. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question about the traffic? Okay.
Great, so we're happy to stay with the site or hop over to underground storage tanks, but, I mean, maybe staying with the site might be the best
Yeah.
segue. So what you received last week was a letter just noting all of the changes that had been made from the original submission. I think the original submission was back in May. I'm not going to go through and bore you with it. I'm sure you can read it and recall what changes had been made, but I think what we're anticipating is some additional changes will be made. And I think we were just looking for some direction tonight on those changes to see if there are any additional changes. And so our list of additional changes would be to add a 5-foot-high black chain link fence around that detention basin, which is over by the school. To add a white vinyl fence starting about 40 feet off of the property line along that school property. You'll recall that there was no fence on that side of the property, but we would look to put a 6-foot-high white vinyl fence starting 40 feet back, just not to obstruct any sight lines. We were going to add some vegetative screening behind the dumpster and along that, that back property line. And we were also going to remove, I think it was spots 11, 12, and 13. I'm not sure what's shown here, but. Great. These right here, 11, 12, and 13, some of the discussion was, how are you going to get into the dumpster? And so we were going to just eliminate those spaces altogether. Over here, those last 3 spaces over there.
Yeah, I think the question also was about deliveries, right?
As
Joe, that
far
was,
as
I think that was Joe's question, right?
Timing, truck turn.
whether those spaces would be used up for delivery.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
that's where we would put the delivery. And somewhat all of this hinges on building, design, building, location. And so you may recall the first plan that we had that had an entrance over here, building set back here. But when we did some realignment to line up the curb cuts with Council on Aging, the building moved over to this side, and some of the discussion was, well, can you move it any closer? And so I think we've talked to Cumberland Farms quite a bit, and they're willing to move it closer. Right now, there's just an empty patio, and we can do one of a couple of things depending upon what the board would like. We can just keep the building where it is, vegetate this area here, just put some landscaping and maybe some sidewalk connectivity, or pull this building up. I think it's about 15 feet closer to the roadway. And I don't think we would have any landscaping, or would need any landscaping at that point. But that, I think, primarily was a topic that we wanted to get some feedback on, because shifting that building, we looked at rotating it, we just can't rotate it, so the best we can do is pull it closer to the street to try to be more in concert with that village center district. So really, this is gonna drive some of the other design that's gonna happen on, what happens with this, is this angle, does that stay where it is, et cetera. So we'll take whatever feedback you have on that building.
I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I know my concern is, I mean, moving the building closer to the street, I understand that, but you're still looking at the side of the building. There's no entrance or anything on that side right
No,
now, right?
there's no.
Yeah, so then you're seeing the side of the building, and then coming from the other direction, from the common, you're going to see the back of the building.
Yeah, I think.
I'll be honest, that's going to be a major eyesore, I think.
Okay.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead, no.
No, it's, the only elevation pictures I have are these.
Yep.
This is a little different than some of the Cumberland Farms you've recently built. There's no the green stripe over both the building and the gas island. So that's different. That now has, or it just doesn't show up on
It
this.
probably just doesn't show up on that. So this, what you see right there is having a little bit of landscaping.
Yep.
And you'll see there's some arborvitae's along that back there, and then we've also got some landscaping along the road. But I think that, I mean, I guess it depends on what the board wants. We have done different things. I don't think the floor plan is going to change, so I think we're going to be stuck with that layout. But if there's something else we can do, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to the board, I think we could do it. I know we've talked to Mr. Di Giuseppe about a couple of different things.
Well,
Frankly, this is,
Part of the problem is, I don't know how else to put it, but going westbound and looking at the underwear of the building, the backside of the building, it's just hideous. And this is, I want to see you there. I obviously can't speak for my fellow board members, but I need to be convinced that this is going to be a symbiotic relationship and not simply a parasitic relationship. It's a great location, but it's the center of our community, and this is hideous. I'm just being candid in terms of, you've got no, it's kind of like building a house with no front door. The most proximate part of the building to the street is the side, and we talked about having an entrance with a portico that gives you a sense of, I'm part of the community, as opposed to, you're driving by, pulling for gas, and be off on your way. That, and as I said, the back end of the building, I'm not sure how you fix it. That's what your designers get paid to do, but that isn't what I would consider a plus in terms of design for the center of the community. I want to see you there, and I'm not looking to shrink the building, shrink the islands. To be candid, I want to be impressed, and I don't know how you do that. I've got some thoughts, but the lack of a presence or an entry on what I consider the front of the building, even though it's not facing the island, it looks like a house built without a front door. It doesn't look inviting to the community. It's probably great for, just driving in and getting gas, but it doesn't add to the sense of a town center. So I'm going to leave it to you to convince me, because otherwise I won't vote for this as it's currently designed. I'm not looking for you to shrink the building, shrink the gas islands. Just, whether you angle the building to follow the contour of the fence, I don't know. I've also seen some of your stores where the building itself bends. But I'll leave that to you, but as it stands, I can't vote for it because it's not adding to, you're missing the opportunity to be part of the community as opposed to simply feeding off it. And, I'm a capitalist. I've got no issues with people making money as opposed to the current state of affairs. But you've got to impress me to get my vote.
okay.
I know there was talk about moving the building. I know you're saying it's not possible. I got to think there's something better that can be done. I don't think anybody on the board here is an architect or a designer. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, that really should not be on us to kind of point out how you do that, but I 100% agree with Joe. I don't see a problem with the size of the building, and I would like to see it there personally. But as it is, I don't, just looking at it, that's the center of our town. Every other building in that area is facing the street. It's, some of the older buildings are even, they're more pleasant to see. I don't know how you fix it. I'm in the
I
same
don't think
boat.
that the building has to be moved. I just think there has to be some type of entrance with a portico or something that says, welcome you in.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Joe had pointed this out last time too, is the back is where the deliveries are going to be coming through. So you're going to be, you're coming through the center, and the whole, we don't have it in place yet, but the center for the vision for the center is not, again, the underwear of the building, as Joe put it. You're going to see deliveries going in and out and just nothing. So there's got to be some way to fix it. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, the conversation that Tom and I had, and Nicole was involved, I should say, actually has a degree in interior design. So when we were having a conversation about possibly rotating, but I understand the issues that you have there. But as far as some of the things that we could do with this configuration, they have some good examples already where you have outdoor dining. Like that example, was
Florence.
Florence.
I think it's the one.
Where
Do you have a photo of that?
I did not provide it,
Okay.
but it had outdoor dining. It actually was covered. It extended.
It's got a pergola, so it's similarly situated to this design right here. It's got a patio, so you probably couldn't bring it up as close to the street because it has a patio with some tables, a pergola, and then like a knee wall with a stone veneer. I actually think it's very nice. It's in downtown Florence, which is in Northampton, very walkable. All the buildings in that area are really pushed up towards the street. So when I'm hearing what I'm hearing, I'm starting to think that's something that we've got to figure out how to deal with this over here. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
that happens yet. I don't know about
So
the rotation, but I think as far as, something with that pergola and with that knee wall, I think you'll be, if you get a chance to look at it, I think you'll be impressed.
So my concern, and playing devil's advocate, my concern is that it shouldn't take Paul and Nicole to come up with that solution.
But we enjoy it.
I know you do, and I appreciate, and we all appreciate everything you two do. You guys are always working, and it's crazy. I expect more. I wouldn't expect reliance on town employees to try to figure this problem out. We're saying what it's an issue, this is an issue for us, and that should be, you go figure it out and come back to us with a solution.
If I don't want to beat this dead horse, but.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to see it, again, that green stripe, I was kind of hoping that wasn't there. And you're not on Route 9 or Route 1 where you're competing for eyeballs. 99.9% of the people that are going by there will know it's there. And I don't think you have to be a genius when you see whatever the dimensions of the gas island are, that, oh, I can get gas here. And I know that the green and white motif is part of your new image, but I also know that you've built other stores without that are more in keeping with the surrounding community. And I guess that's what I'm asking you to do, is make the extra effort to be part of the community so that we benefit as a community and have people say, well, that's a nice Cumberland Farms. And you know your resources better than I. You certainly have the skills better than we do. And that's what I'm asking. Again, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'd be much more comfortable trying to persuade anyone who isn't supportive of this if I were impressed with the contributions that this facility could make to the community.
Yeah, I don't mean to pile on or anything, you're aware of the concerns, and, this is for everybody to be involved in the conversation, so. Anybody else? I'm sorry.
I'll make one comment. As a mother, as you guys know, of someone who goes to the Yale School, and a future middle schooler, and knowing some of the foot traffic you're going to get from that school and from the middle school, there are a number of students who will leave the schools and walk down to Honeydew Donuts, Bagels and Cream, and potentially to your future site. And I'd like you guys to take that into serious consideration when you're doing the site design and where you think a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13, a 14, a 15-year-old is going to access your site. And the last thing you want them to do is walk across the gas pumping facility, I would assume, considering it's not going to be a grown adult. So take that into consideration when you're looking at pet access. I think to Joe's point, a side entrance straight off a sidewalk where you don't want them crossing into your parking area, crossing into where, people are going to be driving in and out of the pumps is just something to consider. So I like the idea of adding the fence along the school property. I think that's critical because otherwise you are going to have people who are curious, teenagers. But there are, go there on after school, go there on a half day. That's what the students do. They'll walk from the middle school, they'll walk from the high school, they'll walk from that elementary school, which has 4th and 5th graders from it. So take that into consideration, I think, when you're looking at this revised site design, that, abundance amount of your pet traffic from that direction is going to come from school-age children, not college kids.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I thought initially there was some conversation about having some tables and chairs out in front. I don't see them on the plans now.
They were there initially, and then Cumberland Farms removed them, I think, through pulling the building closer to the street. You know,
And if
and,
you're looking to show us the pergola idea, then maybe something like that would return.
yeah, I mean, is somewhat of a work in progress, and part of it is understanding what the community wants when we're doing it, and not just saying, we're gonna guess what the community wants. All those other projects that I've been involved in that, you know, might not have the green stripe and might have the pergola, weren't the first efforts coming in front of the board and saying, here you go, we know what you want. This is the process, it's the evolution of the building, and that's, I mean, I think we've showed it for the past, I mean, I met with Paul over a year ago, so I think we're trying to do what we can for the community, we're just asking for a little bit of help to say, okay, here's how you can be good in the community. And so I think we're hearing a lot of that. And then now it's up to us, we do have the resources, now it's up to us to look to appropriately design it for what we've heard you're looking for.
The material handed out also shows some signage on the side. I don't think you're showing it there.
Yeah, that one doesn't look like it has it. It was just an elevation put together for conversation purposes. When we come back in, we'll make sure that you'll have the one that we'd be proposing.
Okay, at an earlier meeting, I think Joe had some concerns about the signage, the pylon sign, the size of the pylon sign. Have you addressed that in any of your filings?
Only through the zoning board of appeals where we got the variance.
What's the height? I thought I was reading it's 14.6. 14.7.
I think the first time we heard it, Joe, that you had mentioned that you would look to see a shorter sign.
You had seen somewhere else, I think. I
Hart's
can't remember.
Corner in Taunton, and I didn't measure it, but there was a box truck next to it, and the elevation of the truck was 12 feet, and it was the height, and that was the height of the sign.
Which, what store was
Hart's
that?
Corner,
Hart's Corner?
Taunton.
Was it the design of that one, or just the size?
Just the overall size. I guess what part of the aesthetic I'm hoping to get is something that's toned down a little more. I mean, again, if you're on 9 and you've got to, grab someone off the street as they're driving by, I understand that, but that need doesn't exist here for you.
That's pretty toned down.
Yeah.
I want the corner and the sides, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I think what Maureen was saying is, I think 38 miles per hour was the average speed. So to a certain extent, it's not the slowest. It's not like the average speed is 20 miles an hour
No, but
on that road.
as I said, 95% of those people know you're there, and
Hopefully.
At least, as opposed to driving, as I said, Route 9, Route 1, where I may not know you're there, and you're competing with, McDonald's, all kinds of other stuff. You're pretty out there. So you don't need the graphics that you would typically need, in my humble opinion. And again, that's part of the exchange where it can be a symbiotic relationship.
And I think to that point, I think to the chairman's point as well, Cumberland Farms' typical sign package is a lot more grand than this, louder, if you will. And I think that we came in initially with a more subdued plan in consideration of that. It's one of those things that we have to look back and say, if we came in with that grand one and then ended up where we are now, would everybody say, okay, well, they gave up something?
No, I'm not, as I said, I'm not looking to beat anything out of you. I'm looking for this to be a plus to the community, without in any way impacting your profitability, and I don't think it does.
I think signage is very important, both to profitability, but also public safety. I think it's going to be a benefit to the community, not only aesthetically, I mean, respectfully compared to what you have there now, plus the taxes it's going to generate, especially compared to what you have now. Cumberland Farms, they have a good product. If you've driven by their other newer stores, they're well-maintained. They have a secret shopper program. People go around and stores get bonuses for having it clean, well taken care of, hospitable. So I think they have a lot of pride in their product. So while we can understand that the aesthetics, are very important, I don't think you should always judge the book by its cover. we hear what you're saying. We'll take
I
it
just
back
don't think
and,
they're mutually exclusive.
Agreed.
That's my point.
yeah, I agree.
There also, I mean, I think we would encourage additional signage on the side. I don't know what our bylaws limit your signage, but certainly that's probably more signage than you're used to getting in most of your facilities, and so that might
You
accommodate.
get a lot of signage. I mean,
So,
respectfully.
but I'm
you get a lot
saying
of
that
signage.
there is that ability. And again, granted, you may want to show your pricing, but that could probably be done on a monument sign as opposed to a 14-foot pylon, or whatever it is.
All right, anyone else?
I had some more questions.
Oh, go ahead.
At an earlier meeting, I had raised the question about you've gone through very extensive description of putting in this significant system for the protecting the environment and dealing with the tanks. My question was, what's the cost of removing that system, and what's involved in doing it?
The subsurface stormwater infiltration system?
The system
retention
related,
system?
regarding to your gas tanks, and it's everything dealing with it?
So the underground storage tanks, also decommissioning the actual gas station. I don't know that we have that information. We can find that out. Not a typical request that we get, but we can find that out for you.
Okay. Would you be willing to post a bond to secure its
No.
release? Removal?
No.
Oh.
I mean, this is unlike, I know what you're thinking, or I'm assuming that you're thinking about it in the solar context when you're thinking about decommissioning sureties and,
No, I'm thinking of a Reed Barton,
oh,
where we're faced with an
Interesting.
major exposure to decommission a property where they've gone bankrupt.
Sure.
And we've been stuck with the property, and we've been running with it for several years, trying to get funds to decommission it. And that's something that I think, given what we're talking about, is not an unreasonable request.
how old is that building?
I couldn't tell you.
It started in around 1900 and was added on over the years.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on the design? We're going to get to the tanks and everything, is the next.
The question I had was, well, it's also on design. Well, it's more hours of operation well, I guess the question I had was, again, with I'll just note it, that my concern is hours of operation and the number of pumps that you're putting in there. Looking at comparable stores in the area, Mansfield has 4 islands, Sharon has 2 islands and 8 positions, and their hours go from 6 to 10. You have residents living on two sides of yours, and a school on the other side. I think it's not unreasonable for us to, you've obviously in other situations limited your hours at least to 12, 5 to 12, to go 24 hours in a situation where it's not a commercial zone, you're in a
course
village
it's a commercial
but village commercial, but behind
It's
you,
commercial. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't commercial,
no, it's village commercial.
but it's commercial.
Excuse me, it's village commercial.
It is,
You're
right.
here with a special permit because it's village commercial, but
Right.
behind you is residential.
Correct.
And to the side are 3 homes.
And a business.
Okay. And the other side is a school. In other locations,
open
I'm
at night.
sure, I know your other location in Sharon is a 24-hour operation, but that's located in a commercial zone, and the nearest building is over 100 feet away from you.
And I can give you plenty of other examples that are similarly
I'm sure you
situated
can.
to this, that
I'm sure you
have
can.
24-hour
You're
operation.
asking for a special permit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned, there's residents living behind you, there's residents to the side of you, and to have a 24/7 operation, I think it's not unreasonable, you've done it before, to ask for limitation, and you have from 5 to 12, that's fine. That's one of my concerns. And the other is, I don't know why this site has to be maximized. I know as a developer, every developer comes in here, they want to put the biggest and the best, and the most expansive use. And I'm just saying, given where we are in this type of location and its sensitivity, because you are located next to a school and next to residential uses, to cut back the number of pumps that you're putting in there. One of the things that we didn't talk about with the driving was, the question that had been raised, just so you can make that list, was, my understanding, your count was based on the size of the square footage of the convenience store. It had nothing to do with the number of pumps, it had nothing to do with the traffic flow in front of your store. And I knew someone was going to come back to us and give us an explanation as to how that related, because basically you're relating on a gas station with a convenience store, but the predicate was the size of the convenience store. And my question was, what's the variable with the size of the number of pumps you have, and the traffic count in front of those pumps in terms of the flow of traffic in and out.
The internal circulation of the site.
That's correct. Just a minor question. I just happened to notice, in some of the websites, you have a grand opening community fundraising program. Is that something that's available?
Sure. I mean, Cumberland Farms is always looking to partner with communities. I mean, for one of the projects we had in Deerfield, it was at an intersection that used to house a sandwich board sign for the town, and what Cumberland Farms did was put up an interchangeable sign for the town, just to point to South Deerfield. So, I mean, those types of things they're willing to do. Frankly, some of the things that you're talking about, like the reduction of the pumps, the not having 24/7, put the project in jeopardy. I mean, just quite simply.
You know, you also had a fundraiser, I think it was 10 cents per beverage for the first month.
I think we're kind of getting.
I mean, we can
off track
put-
here. I'd like to kind of, I know, but I want to try to keep
On the
this to
table.
what we're talking about. And right now, we're talking about the design of the building.
Okay.
I mean, we're going off on tangents, and these meetings end up going 5 hours, and there's no need for that. So let's try to focus this, like I said, any questions on the design of the building, the layout of the site? If there are no further questions on that, I'll ask anyone in the audience if they have any questions on the site.
I do have an operational question, but I'll save that till later.
Thank you. Okay, anyone in the audience? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Sue Lieber, 16 Seminary Way. One question I have is I don't even know if it's a possibility, is to be able to get copies of the updates like you guys get prior to the meetings, like the site plan. I don't know if that's possible, so that I could review it as well, just because I don't really know what changes they've put into effect since the last one.
Where can they find that?
We can certainly email it. Hopefully soon enough, we'll get a file sharing program where all of this will always be posted. Cole, do you happen to have a card? No, but I can grab it. Okay.
Okay.
We can email it to you if that works?
That would be fantastic, just to have the opportunity to see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
With getting rid of, yeah, exactly, with getting rid of the spaces, the dumpster, the whole thing. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, anything that's public, yeah, you should be able to get
And if
access
you-
to, so.
You can come by town
Right.
hall and
Yeah.
see it.
All of this is digital too, so if emailing works, that's.
Yeah, so it would be available, like if I came, if my husband stopped in like this afternoon or whatever, he could have grabbed a copy of that? Okay, I wasn't aware of that, thank you.
Yeah, anyone interested, I would say, Nicole, you're okay with them contacting you? Yeah. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
contact Nicole and she'll, we can email you the updates.
Perfect,
Very good question.
thank you. And I just have an issue with the hours of operation, but whenever we get to that to discuss, that would be great. I'll bring it up then.
Okay, anyone else in the audience? All right. So now we're talking tanks.
Okay, yeah, last but not least. So we had submitted an application for the special permit under the new bylaw. We're looking to store 40,000 gallons, two 20,000 gallons, double wall fiberglass interstitial monitored tanks. If you were, I think you were all here, or you were all in the library when Bob Coluccio made his presentation. Hopefully you were able to stay awake. It's a little dry, but he does a good job. We're happy to have him back on the 17th. If you'd like another presentation, we didn't bring him here this evening. We have submitted that letter from Web Engineering, which gives you really, it's great nighttime reading. It gives you the rundown of everything that these tanks have, what the fuel lines have, the safety mechanisms, et cetera. And then what I've also got for you is a little bit more information, essentially a memo on Cumberland Farms specific policies and procedures. Of course, I don't expect anybody to have to read through this evening, but this was really in a response to a couple of the articles that we got today, and thinking about what those best management practices are. And so when we got in touch with Cumberland Farms, relative to those best management practices, they said, "Oh, we already do all of those." You know, every employee is trained on gas dispensing procedures. Each store has speedy dry for any gas spills, so they're not flushing it with water and letting it roll out into the stormwater system. Maybe we can have either Christian or John talk about the stormwater system a little bit, and if anything gets off of the pad, just where it goes and what happens to it. There are positive limiting barriers on that concrete pad, which can hold a certain amount of gasoline. There's something in that packet, it's a yellow laminated card ultimately that's at the store that provides instruction to employees as to steps to take in case there is an incident, and those incidents are, gas spills or leaks, fire at the pumps or other fires, if a dispensary is hit and somebody drives off with the nozzle in their tank, just what they are supposed to do. There's an emergency gas shut-off at the register for the gas pumps, and each dispenser is equipped with a crash valve in case a dispenser is hit, so it avoids a larger spill. And so, when we suggest that what Cumberland Farms has in place, both in infrastructure and procedures, meets or exceeds any Mass DEP standards, is the benchmark should the board look to approve this in any other gasoline filling stations. Cumberland Farms takes it seriously, it's their business, they're sensitive to the environment, and so we would suggest that you could make the finding and grant the special permit. But with that, though, I'll turn it over to either John or Christian just to talk a little bit about the stormwater system, what it does, and then at the end you can let me know if you want Bob here next time.
Hi, good evening. John Marchand from Farland Corp. So as Tom mentioned, there are positive limiting barriers at the edge of the concrete mat where the dispensers are. Should any fuel spill go beyond that mat, the fuel would flow by gravity toward the stormwater system, which consists of catch basins, which have a deep sump, and they're hooded, so there is some storage capacity in each catch basin. Those catch basins would discharge to a central water quality unit, which is designed to capture any hydrocarbons or solids prior to discharge to the surface stormwater infiltration basin.
For the record, Christian Fallon, Principal Engineer and President of Fallon Corp. Also, I think it's important to note that the concrete area has a canopy over it, so the rainwater hits that canopy, that water's not washing on that concrete and running off. And also, we designed the concrete areas where stormwater isn't flowing through that area. It's basically getting sheet flow around the concrete. That minimizes the water from just flushing over that concrete area.
On that point, where does the canopy rainwater drain to?
That drains basically underground here. You see these lines here of pipes. So the drain water catches it on the rooftop. That's all clean water. Runs down the pipe, which runs underground into the subsurface recharge system. If the board has any questions in regards to the stormwater.
You said there's a limiting barrier. I know, I've seen grooves. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, basically those grooves are designed to hold at least 5 gallons per pump. That's the volume of what those grooves can actually hold. And that would be for a very small spill.
And what's the grade of the area that's underneath the canopies? Is it flat grading? Is it graded in a particular direction?
Basically 1%, yeah,
In what direction?
to the drainage area.
Okay. So a rainfall that's running down, that's not on the canopy, would still run over that?
No.
It wouldn't?
Because it's at a higher elevation. Contours here was graded, so the water, it gets drained to this catch basin here. There's a high point in here, so this water is going that way there to the trench drain out front.
You basically put the island on an island from a rain perspective.
Exactly. And it's covered.
What about vapors? Vapor inclusion?
I mean, we're not here to talk about the environmental aspects. I think we presented everything to the board.
I'm just asking a question. Good.
Anyone else with questions?
Is evaporation of the spill? What happens to the spill? Is it, what, you get a spill, you hold 5 gallons. What happens to that spill?
It's the protocol, common contact protocol for every small spill, large spill, and that's what we basically just provided.
And what is it? Can you tell us what that is?
Sure, so I think, I mean, what would happen if it's 5 gallons, if it's something greater,
It's listed in what he just handed.
different circumstances, yeah, but I think they go and get Speedy Dry, throw it down, and then they've got certain containers so that they can put that material, and they keep it separate, so they don't like put it in the dumpster, they don't just store it and let the rainwater hit it. They're using dry material to pick up whatever it is that discharged, and then put it into a contained system, and then put a call into Cumberland Farms, and then anybody else that they need to call, whether if it's DEP or the fire department.
So you open 24 hours, how are you manned on midnight to 5?
I can find out for you.
Huh?
I can find out for you. I don't know exactly how many employees will be on between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m.
Okay, so if there's a spill at 3 in the morning, and I'm just saying there's one person on, how is that handled? Is that handled differently? Is it in the protocol?
It's the same procedures. If there's one person there,
I would think so. But I'll get that specific answer for you.
Okay, and is there some alarm system that goes off if there's a spill in terms of the person that overfills his tank? Is there an alarm that goes off, so someone inside, as opposed to I just fill it up, put the thing on and drive off? I'm not necessarily walking inside to say there's a spill. Is there some kind, we've heard you talk about alarm systems, I guess, underground. Is there an alarm system if something happens above ground?
With somebody just inadvertently overfilling their tank, or, I mean, there's a hierarchy, right? If they're taking it out, spraying it on the ground, one thing.
Someone falls over, they have a problem, someone gets a heart attack, so something can happen, there's a spill.
So in both of
I'm
those
just saying-
situations, I'm doubting that they would still be clenching on to the, I mean, if we're going down these,
Okay, I'm just trying to find out.
sure, well, there's closed-circuit television cameras and sight lines. I don't know about,
these are all sightlines, and Cumberland Farms, they designed these scenarios where the workers can see every person filling, and also there's cameras that are monitored. Also the safety features.
right on the pumps. Yeah.
Safety features on the pump and
Okay.
And I assume they have regular
Inspections.
inspections around the site,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah, I mean, the big thing with fueling stations is, I mean, they've come a long way since 1980, with EPA is high regulations on these gas stations, and it's constantly changing. Certainly Cumberland Farms is the leader at the top, especially in this region. This isn't a Joe Gas rolling in here, looking to cut corners. This is a national tenant that takes every safety feature that's out there, technology-wise. There's alarm systems here that would go from this door to the headquarters in Marlboro that are armed 24/7.
Is it even possible to overflow a tank anymore?
I think so.
Yeah.
you could overfill like your gas can.
Gas
You
tank.
fill that-
Something like,
Well, even I was actually filling a gas can today, and it shut off before I filled it, and a couple of
Tried?
drops fell on the ground, I'm sorry.
That's not true. I have
What?
my pants to show it.
Oh, no, I'm sure, yeah, but no, I'm just saying today, it shut right off. So, I mean, the amount of dangerous spill, I don't know.
Well,
Anything further?
There were some articles that were, as part of the system, you saw them relative to small spills and the concern for small spills. I'm just aware of a toxicology profile for benzene by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. This was done in August of 2007. And they were talking about benzene. And they said benzene, it evaporates very quickly and dissolves slightly in water. It also talked about that benzene levels in the air can be elevated by emissions from, among other things, gasoline stations. And one of the major sources, again, major sources of benzene are from automobile service stations. And then what was concerning to me was one of their conclusions where it said benzene is a major component of gasoline and used in manufacturing process. Increased levels of benzene can be found at fueling stations and at air emissions from manufacturing plants and hazardous waste. Living near gasoline fueling stations or hazardous waste sites may increase exposure to benzene. People are advised not to have their children play near fueling stations, manufacturing plants, and hazardous waste sites. You're putting this thing next to a school with elementary school students, and that for me raises a concern, and that's why I'm asking all of these questions, and I think it should remain a concern. Benzene obviously is a product, is a byproduct of gasoline, and from what I can tell, there's a bunch of articles that indicate regardless of the materials that you're providing, there remains an ever-present risk of that exposure. And I don't know, for myself, I don't know that I'm willing to accept that exposure on behalf of an elementary school that's right next door to me.
Understood.
All right. Are there any more questions on the gas, the tanks, the storage, spillage, anything like that? Anyone? All right. How about the audience? Anyone in the audience? No? Okay. So now, and just to go back, Orin, I want to make sure you have very good questions, and I want to make sure that you get every question asked. I just want to make sure that we're focusing and trying to get through this. And I just don't want anything to get lost, because we're in the middle of one topic, we bring up something else, and then back to this, and that's how things extend to longer meetings, extra meetings that are completely unnecessary. So, but I do think you have valid questions, and I think I want to hear all of them. So, are there any questions in general from anyone here?
An operational question. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, so I'm not expecting necessarily an answer from you at this point. Given the location's proximity to schools, would you, I want to let you know, I think I would be proposing a condition that alcohol not be sold at this location. In the event that Massachusetts rules around that change, since Cumberland Farms is currently potentially sponsoring a ballot initiative in 2020 around that. So that's something I think I would look to propose potentially for this site. So if that is something that you are amenable to, that would be, I would appreciate that.
Above my pay grade.
I understand. That's why I proceed as I did.
I appreciate it. Let me take it back and see what I can do.
Would that apply to marijuana sales as well?
We would control those rules, so I'm not worried about those rules.
Not if we approve this for commercial locations.
But we would have to do that. So right now, it's just an industrial.
Okay. Any further questions, guys? No?
No. Not this time.
Okay. All right. Anyone from the audience? Yeah, come on up.
Hello again, Sue Lieber, 16 Seminary Way. Orin brought up a good point about the enzymes. They've been very accommodating to the landscaping, the fences, but I would like to make a point that the property lines are within 150 feet of my house, the corner of my house. And if that's going to affect the property value of my house, having a gas station there, that could bring up a big problem for myself and/or anyone who is going to purchase my house in the future, having young children. My children are not out playing in the yard, but there are pets that live right in that area as well. So that is a concern of mine. So I would be interested to know what that effect is on the surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, do we know if the peer reviewer for the stormwater would evaluate it in terms of potential spills and chemicals associated?
I believe they would, because the Mass Stormwater Handbook talks about, facilities like gas stations in terms of stormwater and the systems that need to be put in place to contain it.
So when we see that, we should see some
I'll
specific.
confirm that with John, but that is in the handbook. I know John is very familiar with it.
It's very difficult to move this along without the peer review.
Yeah. I don't know what's required to properly contain gasoline and benzene,
Yeah.
but that's what the peer reviewer engineer is being paid to do.
All right, any further questions from the audience? All right.
There's one.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Just state your name and address for the...
Yes, my name is Kevin Quirk, 61 West Main Street, Honeydew Donuts. I'm here with Don Levitt from Honeydew Corporate. A few issues here. One, just to allude back to the traffic issue. The school department employs a crossing guard now, currently, without any issues, just for to handle the traffic, to expedite the buses in and out of the school district. Why do we want to add to that congestion? I don't see where that's going to make a point. And Orin, to your point earlier, when an alarm sounds and there's a leak already, that damage has already occurred. So once the alarm goes off, there's a leakage in the parking lot, the alarm goes off, really doesn't help anything, it just alerts people to that point, Bill, so that's a good point. I'm all for strong economic growth and a strong town economy. This on the outside may seem like it's a strong growth and strong for economy, but it's really not. This opening up across the street from my business, across the street from Nick's Pizza, Bagels and Cream, they've opened up other stores across the community. It's taken away 20% of local businesses' economy. So taking away 20% of my sales, 20% of Nick's sales, Bagels and Cream, that's not growth. That might be growth here, but it's not growth for me, and it's going to impact all of our local businesses. I look back to when CVS moved in and Walgreens moved in. They put Haskins out of business within a year. That business was there for decades, really for decades, and it was gone within 9 months. My business and Nick's Pizza has been there for generations. And having this open up and have that impact our businesses is not what I would consider to be growth. It's just my 2 points. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Go ahead, if you have anything else.
No, I guess just a laundry list for next time, when that next time will be, and if you're satisfied with the underground storage tank piece, so that you could make a finding on the special permit, or if you want us to have Bob Coluccio here, the real underground storage tank engineer, if you have other questions. We'd like to close off as many of these as we can, just so that we have less open items along the way.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable closing it off yet. Anyone here?
No, I'd like to see the stormwater. Speaking for myself, the information, the engineering information we got, I have no clue what it says, what it is. Is that something that we would typically peer review, or is that something we can rely on their engineers to evaluate it, or to give us some other things we can ask for?
On the tanks?
Yeah.
But you certainly, as the planning board, could.
I don't know,
Initiate
in
a
the
peer
industry,
review
is there
for
other
it.
people that could come in and say, that's the best practice, and the best practice, we want to add something to do that, to make sure it's appropriate? I'm not sure, I'm just asking. I know myself,
peer
I
review.
hear it sounds good, but I can't really question anything that they're saying. I have some sense I can ask a question on traffic. Once you put that stuff on the ground, I have no clue. And I'm not comfortable that I know what they provided. I'm assuming it's an engineer, and I'm assuming it's appropriate, but I don't know how that stands in relationship to the industry, and whether there's something more we should ask for.
I think their engineer did a really good job at the library. It was very thorough. But I would like to see the peer review, and also if there are more questions of him, would it be good to bring him back?
I think from my perspective, the peer review is essentially Mass DEP. If it's not gonna, it's not the snuff, it's not getting past DEP. That's my kind of view on it. I mean,
If I could, maybe we'll have Bob here next time. I mean, you can, as the board, make an assessment of Bob if you think that he's, honest,
No, it's not that.
intelligent. But part of it is a value judgment that you're making on, you're the judges here. You're looking at him and saying, yes, I believe what he is saying. He's, I
Is
sat through his
something more or
presentation
something
too.
different we can ask for that's appropriate for that site? That's all. I'm not saying what he's given is not correct. I just don't know enough to say, yeah, but why can we do this, or can we add this other component?
My guess is if you ask him, he'll tell you. I mean, that was just my sense from the meeting over at the library. If you have a question for him, he's not going to lie to you.
Okay, so why don't we have him back, and then, if you're offering that, that
Sure.
way we can ask any further questions.
and the next meeting would have been, I guess, the next meeting I think is contingent on having the stormwater having the peer review in.
Yeah, our next one
Otherwise,
is the
it's not.
17th, so,
I guess, but he was asking if there's still open questions that you wanted us to review with you as to what we had to go back?
Yeah, I guess two different things here. As far as the 17th goes, yeah, I mean, if we could put it on for that hearing, and then if we have the peer review, maybe go forward with it. If not, and what I meant, check the boxes of these issues. It's
Yeah.
not that I'm looking to get a closure of it, but just to know what those outstanding issues are so that we can address them appropriately.
absolutely.
So yeah, we would ask for the 17th, just to keep it moving and to keep checking off these boxes if and as possible. If we don't have the peer review, we can't talk about the stormwater. Hopefully by that time, we have a redesigned site that fits in better with the community. We'll have Bob here to talk about the underground storage tanks, fueling, emissions, everything else. Sorry, through the chair.
Okay. Yeah, do we have any questions for them to bring back to us? on this?
A couple.
Yeah.
You were going to get back to us on the cost of removal. You were debating whether you would do that or not. I guess the question was still open on what you're going to do in the front.
And when you say what you're doing in the front, meaning just architecturally, or if there's going to be a pergola with some sort
To
of seating?
address Joe's concerns.
Yes.
Okay.
I think there has to be an entrance on the front. I think it provides a visual cue. I just make the example of if you have a house, who would build a house? Even though no one typically uses a front door, houses have front doors. I think what I'll view is the front of that has to have a door and an entrance, and I think it's particularly useful for if you've got, Wheaton students down the street to be walking up, and rather than have them walk around through traffic to the side, they can walk right in. And I think it visually makes a statement.
We'll look at it. I'm not holding my breath based on conversations I've had, but we will certainly look at it. If we can come up with some compromise that gets those students so we're cognizant of the pedestrian path that they're taking, so they're not walking through a parking lot or in front of cars. I mean, that's obviously what we would like to do. So we'll take a look, just based on the conversations I've had. Getting a second entrance over there, given the store layout, is tough.
So from my perspective on that, I'm not necessarily going to be specific on what I want to see, but it's got to be something.
Yep.
It's as broad as I guess you can get, but yeah, it has to be different.
You were going to check as to what you can do possibly with signage on the monument mount, on that sign. I had, and I guess, I don't know whether you have to address it with somebody, whether you can address with them hours of operation.
And alcohol.
The alcohol, yeah.
Alcohol.
I've got that. Site design, hours of operation, freestanding sign, are kind of the big ones that I've got here.
Number of pumps.
We'll take a look, but I think,
I just.
I know, but I just don't want to keep coming back to it. I understand,
That's
but
an open question. If
we
you're
had that.
saying it can't be done, then we have to deal with it. And then one of the
You
things.
said that previously, right? That
Correct.
it was going to stay?
this is what it is, yeah.
Never mind. I've heard that from other developers, and that's fine. Then one other question that, and I'm sorry I didn't raise it before, that I thought was still open was trying to get the the traffic count, if there's any way helping us with dealing with the traffic count as opposed to the, based upon the square footage of the store versus the other components of it. And again, the same store, it could be
It's
somewhere
just
else.
based on our bylaw.
Huh?
I think it's just based on how our bylaw is written for parking.
No, not parking, this is for traffic count,
Okay.
for the traffic, the
That's it.
interior traffic.
Yeah, the
Industry
count was based
standard, I
on the
think, is-
Store, not the whole.
Just the store, not where it is, what the traffic is in front of it, you have an
I
expectation.
think it has to be based a little bit off of what the traffic is in front of it.
Well,
because-
that's not what she's saying.
No, I think to,
That's the issue. They're saying basically they're ignoring what traffic, where you are, what the traffic is. They're only basing it based on the size of the store. And I think there's something missing when you've got this type of situation.
and if the size of the store is incorporated in how many pumps, then I think that needs to be clear. If it's just the size of the store, where those numbers are coming, is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my concern.
Yeah. Or are the number of pumps factored into that as well, or is it just a standalone for the store? All right, anything else, guys? All right.
Okay.
We're looking at the 17th, so we can continue to the 17th?
Please.
Need a motion on that? Or do we just continue?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second motion, second to continue. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't think we needed that, but just in case. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you soon.
I saw that part of the shit come through a newsletter that I saw, and I'm like, wait a second.
All right, we have SP 490, 108 South Worcester Street, Wading River Estates. Now, something I definitely know a lot about.
It is.
Condos. So whenever you guys are ready.
My name is Daniel Vieira. I'm an attorney from the town of Easton. For the record, 480 Turnpike Street. I represent the applicant. With me is Tracy Duarte. She's a principal engineer and the project manager from MBL Land Permitting, and they're from the town of Rainham. The project that's before you is one that I'm sure that in terms of location, many members of the board are familiar with. It's a site plan special permit application with regard to a project now referred to as Wading River Estates. And when I came in this evening, I heard some members talking about, what was this and where did it come from? So I thought it'd be useful if you could just briefly speak first about what the history of this property is. This was at one time a permitted 40B project. It was under that particular permit, it was actually under the subdivision control law, so it was actual individual lots. It was a 60-unit project consisting of single-family homes and duplexes. When that project ultimately, the permit was issued by the Housing Appeals Board. I think it was initially denied locally over units, but it ended up getting approved by the state. And the only reason the project didn't get developed, and I know it was part of, we didn't represent the applicant at that time, nor did the engineering firm, but it didn't get built because there was subsequent litigation between the owners and the entity that was going to develop the site. And of course, what happened shortly I should say a few years after that, the permits continued to be extended because at that time, we are now in 2007, 2008, the Commonwealth had actually initiated statutes that were automatically extending permits. So you didn't actually have to go to boards and committees to extend permits. And that extended to planning board, conservation, and that was a recognition that there were projects that were permitted that for economic reasons in the economy at the time weren't being constructed. And so this was one of those projects. The permits now are of course, completely expired. But that was a very large project. I would guess a very contentious project, particularly because it ended up being permitted on appeal. And so now we move forward to the current time where MBL and our firm were hired by the applicants to relook at this project. And one of the things that transpired in the meantime in the town of Norton and in other towns is that you actually adopted a affordable housing bylaw, which, you know, 2/3 of the residents in this town believe that it would be better to, if you're going to do affordable housing, to do it through a local bylaw than under 40B, and they're exactly right. And part of that which people don't recognize about 40B and why when you see 40B projects, you see them bloom into such large sizes is because there's a unique aspect of 40B that limits the size of profitability on a 40B project, and it limits to a percentage of the entire size of the project. So ironically, you can have a project, and I'm using fictitious numbers, you could have a project that's $1 million project that generates $200,000 of net revenue, and you can have a $2 million project that generates the same $200,000 of net revenue, and under 40B, you have to build the $200,000 one to realize the $2 million one to realize the $200,000 one because of the restriction. So it's not uncommon, and has generally been the practice, that when you look at a 40B project, it's always built to the maximum because the goal is to make the top number, unless you're getting to a point for every dollar you're spending, you're making less than $1. You're always pushing it to make the top level number of construction to be as large as possible. You don't have that restriction. If you're building something on an affordable housing bylaw, you don't have to concern yourself with that issue. And if you look at the project that we've submitted in here tonight, we're not looking for you to do anything other than give us some preliminary input. We've had lots of meetings with Paul, we've had meetings with town council, and we've had meetings with your conservation agent. We met with conservation last night. But we really just want to present to you what we're proposing the project looks like, what the rationale is behind it, and to get some input, to get some more high-level input of what concerns might be or things that we're going to look at. So now you know a little bit about the history, you know a little bit about the project. In terms of the site itself, and I'll turn it over to Tracy to speak more about it. It's a 49-acre site. There's roughly 39 acres of upland. The project that we're proposing would be a 37-unit condominium project. The difference there is that, as many of you may know, when you have a condominium, people own their individual units, but the association owns everything else. So everything that you see on the plan is owned by the association, other than the individual units, which unit owners then own. It consists of 5 6-unit townhouse buildings and 2 3-unit townhouse structures. There's also a single-family home that's located in the front of the site, which would by itself be a freestanding unit, be one of the 37 units of the condominium association. We know that it's a project that's been sensitive in the past. I can't speak for the Conservation Commission. I can tell you what my view of what the discussion was last night. I think part of what makes the project significantly more attractive under the bylaw is that it's much smaller in size. It is completely out of any buffer zones associated with the Rivers Act with regard to wetlands protection. Other than some portions of some drainage structures, there's nothing within buffer zones. So from a pure conservation standpoint, it is a tremendous improvement over what's been permitted at this location in the past. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy. She can probably take you through the project in a little bit more detail, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm just going to step up front so I can
Sure.
point out the new layout. The existing single-family house up front is to remain, And I know Dan said we spread it into 5 16-unit buildings and 2 triplexes. The 2 triplexes are right behind the existing single family. And then you have this sort of large circular road, the 5 16-unit. Sort of similar, gradually getting into the larger buildings and not looking at it on South Worcester Street. Road is a typical 24-foot wide Cape Cod berm, 5-foot concrete sidewalk. It has fire access around into and out of the site. For drainage, sort of at our high points over here, everything's collecting into deep sump hooded catch basins, and they'll go through water quality units, and will be discharged in 1 of 2 vegetated infiltration basins. One of those basins located within the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. That's really the only impact to wetlands. Everything's out of FEMA flood zones, riverfront area, and those basins are designed to completely infiltrate the entire 100-year storm event. Only flows greater than the 100-year will eventually spill over. We have submitted for peer review, we haven't gotten comments back on traffic or stormwater.
When did you submit for that peer review? Do you know?
Probably about 2 weeks ago, we honestly just got the bill, I think today, so we haven't
Right.
sent the check out yet.
That's under conservation peer review or peer review?
That'll be through, stormwater will be through conservation, and you all will be handling the traffic. So it's actually the same peer review team for it, so John Chesia and Vanessa and Associates for traffic.
I just want to make sure we don't run into the same problem we keep continually running into with the peer reviews being
Just, yeah.
delayed.
Yeah, no, but just getting one, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like we keep going in circles, and we're relying on them, and they do something different than we do, and, you know. Can you just describe that fork coming down? Is there this parcel in the middle?
I was going to ask that same thing, Lauren. So there's additional frontage, like a
What is
separate-
that other, that
Where
other,
are we over here?
Nope,
no,
further.
to the right? You got a finger coming down.
It's like a
Like
tract
the
of land.
little-
Oh, right,
It's a
Yeah.
parcel.
It's part of the existing piece of land. It's a very small strip, and there seems to be a pathway in there now.
What's on either side of it? Anything?
There's one more single-family house here.
And then the other
a
side,
single-family that's on our lot.
and the other side of that?
Another single-family.
And then the lots to the left of that are what?
These are all
Single-family houses?
So it's just an odd property line.
It's, yeah, it's existing, there's nothing proposed there.
Okay.
That one in the middle must have just been split out from it at some point.
Yeah, right?
Because otherwise, it doesn't make any
Larger
sense.
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
So my question is, I've been managing condos for over a decade. I've never seen one with just a single-family house in the front. Is there a reason behind that, or is?
Yes, well, there's a reason behind it. To do this project, you have to have a single lot. So if we were to divide this, we'd now be under the subdivision control law. So it's funny that you mentioned that. There's a project in Easton, the Farms in Easton. It's made up of, if you saw it, you would say this is a conventional subdivision. It's all single-family homes, and then to the rear there's 1 or 2 larger or 3 larger buildings. All of the single-family homes are all condos. So the statute doesn't differentiate. They don't have to be attached or detached, although traditionally they're attached.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, there are condos that are single-family homes. I just wanted to see if, why there was just one.
But when we were first looking at this project, I think it was the second meeting we had with Paul, we had a meeting with town council just to go over, okay, let's all make sure that we're all on the same page on what exactly the permitting is. And that was the very purpose of that meeting.
So that single-family home remains intact, no changes, and the roadway will go literally right down the side of
I
that?
think the garage might end up going for it.
Okay.
It's detached. And the only
Okay.
thing we're adding on is we're capturing the existing roof recharge into recharge chambers.
Okay. As part of the project?
Yes,
Okay.
part of the stormwater management system.
Yeah, two questions. Do these units have garages?
Yes, they are. The garages are actually in the back. So if you look at, you kind of have your main roadway, and then it's almost like an alley. It's still 22-foot wide, two-way, but the garages you pull in the back.
Do you allow,
Driving the main roadway, looking at the front of the house, 2-car garage in the back. And then we still have visitor parking, enough for 1 per unit within the roadway, not counting the garage.
1610.
And then there's not a pool or a clubhouse, or it's just, okay.
That was my first thought for the front building, if it was a clubhouse.
Yeah.
I've seen it all, believe me. I haven't seen this.
Is there any parking proposed on the roadway itself?
Yep,
No, aside from the parking spaces designated, will parking be allowed on the roadway?
Like on-street parking is what Orin's asking.
it's a
You mean
24
on
foot, there's
South Worcester?
nothing.
No, on the roadway,
Just to be clear, these aren't roadways.
the
These aren't
driveway,
roadways.
the,
So-
Be a driveway.
They really are. I mean, it would be like permitting a supermarket and has an entrance. We wouldn't, maybe I'm splitting hairs on this, because all I would do this. These aren't really roadways, so these are really, so it would be, do we have additional parking? We do have additional parking.
will you be allowing people to park on the, whatever you want to call it, that's 24
No,
feet
other
wide?
than in parking spaces, no one parks.
Because you have no visitor parking in front of this last building, that's what I'm noting.
So we actually.
They're gonna have to have it.
This design is substantially different than what we were originally looking at. I don't mean the prior project, but even when we started with Paul, we ended up having a department head meeting and looking at what the designs were and, with the fire department. And so this project really, it really just kept getting smaller and smaller until we got to this design. So this is probably the, I don't know what's shown on this plan, but it's at least the 5th or 6th iteration of this plan, each time making it, I think improving upon it before we submitted it, just so that we weren't making 10 more iterations, or hopefully not making 10
So
more.
this is not being proposed as a 40B project, right? It's,
It is not 40B, because that would be statutory, but it is under your Article 19 Affordable Housing Bylaw.
so it establishes some rents. Now, do you report through, do you get qualified through the DC?
The HCP, yes. So on this, you'll end up with 4 units. In terms of its actual operation, and I think you have one other, I have one other in or not this size, but is under 19, because the same engineering firm did it. When we met with town council, was one of the discussions that we had. When you do a project like this, there will be a regulatory agreement between the town and the condominium and the developer. And that regulatory agreement is what determines who qualifies and how somebody buys one, and how, when a resale occurs, how someone's approved to buy it. Because it's based upon, it's a math formula. It's not based upon what the developer paid. If you're a developer and you do a 40B project with condominiums, like say 3-bedroom condominiums, or you go out and you're in Dover, Massachusetts, and you want to do a 50-house subdivision, 4,000 square foot house. The truth is, if you were doing that in Norton, whether you're buying that 3-bedroom condo, or whether you're buying that 3-bedroom, 4,000 square foot house, the sale price will be the same, because it's based upon 30% of somebody who has that 70% of the median income in your community for the purpose of 40B, which happens to be 3 towns, this town, Norton, and I think maybe Plainville or Mansfield. So.
Is it similar to the project that's on West Main Street? Is it, I forget the name of the project.
I think that one's actually.
No, I know there's the lower income ones in it. No, it's on West Main Street. It's a smaller one. It's not as big as this. It's a smaller one. Is that the one you were thinking of, the one that's?
Yes, but I think the point is, though, when we spoke with town council, Copeland and Page has a regulatory agreement specifically. They know your bylaw, they know what this looks like.
It's right next to Susan's
Her comment
office.
was, do not reinvent the wheel, if and when we get to that point.
So it's not something reviewed by the state in terms of qualifications or
I
anything
think
else?
they review it just to establish the qualifications of the town counting the units, but they're not involved, once the agreement is in place, they're not involved in the actual administration. That's just done if you have a housing partnership, or the town, or the select.
So basically, I've never done anything under this bylaw before. It basically gives you a credit, what, 15% additional for number of units, or?
For density, it says it allows up to 30% over conventional zoning.
For square footage, for number of
For
units?
number of units.
Yeah.
Under the special permit of Article 19.
And is that the only other thing that it provides for in the statute?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I believe we're well below, our units are below what we could do conventionally.
Okay.
So we're here, and that's really driven.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's driven by one of our goals was to keep, because it has a shared septic system, was to keep that within Title V, so that's done by the local Board of Health as opposed to done by DEP. So the number of units we have here, number of bedrooms, and the size of the project is really being driven by Title V, which isn't a bad thing, it makes us smaller.
Yeah, I've never seen 40B, I don't know how you do with a condominium where you can't control the condo fees as opposed to the unit prices themselves and the rents. Those don't get controlled.
I'm not sure what your question is.
You can control the rents.
Yes.
And that's what is by agreement, but if it's a condominium, if there's condominium fees, how does that get controlled? Does that stay?
That is not,
That's
what
That's after the fact.
What basically happens is, it's a math calculation. They take prevailing interest rates, and what they do is they basically calculate what the payment would be, adding together the anticipated taxes and the condo fee, and they determine what that payment will look like, and that cannot exceed 30% of a person who falls into the category of being between 70 and 80% of the median income. So they go through that whole calculation, and then they come out with a number. So each time a unit gets resold, that calculation is redone. Because you could have rates at 10%, which could lower the prices of the units.
Are you asking just about the month-to-month condo fees once
Yeah,
it's
how
sold?
does that-
Usually it's by percentage ownership, and they're usually a smaller percentage ownership,
Yeah.
those units.
And when you buy a condo,
So-
you ask for the last however many years of condo
But that's not
fees to
controlled, is what I'm
see.
saying. That's a focus.
No,
We're
but
breaking it
it's
apart.
built into the condominium documents, so whereas those units would be a lower percentage rate, so the condo fee would be certain percentage lower. So if all the other units are 5% and the lower income unit is 2%, then you're paying 2% of the overall budget for the condo fee.
Yeah,
Or my
but that
wheelhouse.
doesn't- but that doesn't, you're not controlling it by a percentage of income, because that.
Not the condo fees, no.
Right, that's.
But
But it's controlled, yeah, well, it is controlled
If it was
because,
just rent, and it was a gross rent, you can control it by that fee, but you can't with a condominium fee.
yeah, the condo fees are different. It's controlled by the purchase price of the unit, but the condo fees are also lower based on the percentage.
And the truth
So-
is, most of the people that qualify, and I've spent as much time sitting on that side of the board as I have on this side. And the truth of the matter is, if you go to a town meeting and say, look to your left and look to your right, chances are both of those people likely qualify for 40B. Because when you really think about it, it's moderate income. I mean, most of the school teachers in your town, most of the people, they're going to qualify.
It's like under 70 for a family of 4 or something like that.
Yeah, so it's based on
pretty high.
household income, so.
How many affordable units would you say?
It'd be 4 because we're 37, it's rounded up, and it's 10%, and that's what the bylaw was.
You're just doing a regular septic system?
Yeah, and that's.
You looked at the fast systems?
From the island, what's that?
Yeah, we're looking into one on another project right now. But there's no really, it's not like a fast food restaurant where we have to do that advanced treatment.
Yeah.
The intent for this one is for each unit to have its own 1,500-gallon tank, and then a small pump to pump it up to the main tank, and then the community pressure dose field.
Have you spoken with the budding owners of these properties?
I know.
It'd be helpful. I think, I'd like to hear what their concerns are. So in terms of myself, just be interested in their concerns, and it'd be
Yeah.
helpful if you spoke with them first.
We've had no one call with the both conservation and these notifications. We did have one abutter show up last night. She just wanted to know about tree clearing limits. That was the concern last night.
Where do you have the trash and the, even the mail, maybe I'm missing it on the plan. Is that on there yet, or is?
Yeah, we haven't done a central
Okay.
mailbox or trash location, but we
Okay.
can.
Paul, this may be something that you've covered with previous discussions, but based on other things that we've had before the board, I'm just going to raise this and make sure that it's something that we've looked at. You were very clear calling this a driveway. So, A, does this fall under our common driveway rules that we've beat our head against like 5 different times? And I know that.
It is
'cause
in the common. We had that conversation, but it's a single lot.
Okay.
It's where
So,
we,
I'm just- Okay, so it's a single lot, so it's not a shared driveway because it's all one driveway. And is there any rule about having that driveway right at the property line? Because I know there was an issue with a driveway needing a setback from a property line. I believe.
Oh, on the, yeah.
I think it was a common drive, so I'm not sure if it applies. I just want to make sure that the driveway is
Right here.
positioned appropriately to that abutters lot line. It looks like there's a gap, but it's hard to, without knowing.
Yeah, we don't know how big it is.
Just how far that, A, how far that driveway is set back from the property line, and B, whether that matters. I'm sure it matters for the abutter, but whether it matters for
Right.
the bylaw.
Yeah, there is a gap there, I don't know.
Yeah. So I think, Joe, it may have actually been you where we butted up against that.
Yeah, there was a conflict between,
Or your son. Not you, Joe.
one and the same at the time. Yeah, I think is it 20 or 25 feet?
The driveway's about 13, 14 feet from the property line.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to make sure that
We'll look into
that's
it.
not a requirement.
Yeah. The common driveway would be another special permit, and so that's why I wanted to, A, raise that first. This is obviously a much smaller
We had that
question.
discussion on Paul's list when he was.
Right.
I'm glad it has already been addressed, so we don't have to deal with it again.
All right, anyone else have questions? Again, this is an initial, pleased to meet you.
Yes.
This is what we're proposing.
I'm reading nothing into this.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyone else on the board have questions?
Can you just talk a little bit about the mix of how many bedrooms per unit?
I believe there's a plan that has a summary of that. They're 2 and 3 bedroom unit.
How many of each?
Yes, the last sheet, I believe. Oh, maybe not, we don't have that one.
Oh, yeah, very last sheet.
Yes, that one.
Oh, I see it. I'm sorry.
So there's 22 bedroom
Horrible ones are in there.
and 16 3 bedroom. And then this single family is
Uh-oh, we messed up the easel.
the bottom one is the So 2 bedrooms are blue, 3 bedrooms are pink.
Do you have a layout of the units themselves?
Yeah, they're down there.
Right on the floor.
Oh, but that's not in here, is it?
No, it wasn't in
No,
the
no,
packet.
it
That's all right. If you can, we'll make it available, yeah.
was, on the picture on the back, but it's not.
So I guess we're hoping for a date, maybe in January.
All right.
To review that by then and we're working our way through that.
All right, so is there are there any other questions on the board? All right, do we have anyone in the audience that has a question of this
Sorry.
Yes.
initially? You can come on up, sir. So what we'll do is, as we have in the past, just ask us the questions and we'll have them reply afterwards.
Dave Robinson, 112 South Worcester Street. I abut the little piece of land that comes out, which we're all questioning in what it is.
You in between it or on the?
I'm on the, as you look at it, I'm on the right side of it.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess the intent is there's, or ask the question to you. The intent is there's nothing to be done with that section of land? 'Cause
I believe that's what they said, but,
There's no intention.
okay.
Yeah.
What, is that landscape now? Is it, what
Dirt
is it?
path.
It's a
I think
dirt,
there's the path there.
it's a dirt path leading out to, it used to be a right-of-way going out to the fishing ground out by the river. I was very much involved with the Strawberry Fields scenario, so I know a lot about what's going on. It is a right-of-way to go out to those fields at one point. Hasn't been used for the 25 years I've been living next door. We maintain it for the most part. For the front part, back part does not get maintained. So if there's going to be no use to that, that's good. Would you like to sell it?
You can talk in the hallway about it.
And there are people, the big concern about the project the first time was the runoff, the water. The Burgess land, which is on the left-hand side of the existing thing, floods out now, and with more, that's the big concern. I know we've got two of the Burgess sons here. They'll probably speak to that, but that was the whole thing, is that, there's a lot of runoff from that land now, and just want to make sure we're concerned about, the flooding that is there today, never mind how much more it may increase as we put the project in. Looks like a much better project than what was proposed before. So I appreciate that. The whole thing is, it looks like it's all behind one little section. You couldn't move it further out or anything like that. I mean, it says right in the backyard of my neighbor now. Just wondering what the buffer zone would be between the existing land to the new.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
And the reason why a lot of it is where it is to try to stay out of the resource areas, the conservation, obviously had a lot of input there.
Even if you don't measure, I think the closest point to a property line, I think we measured it last night, at conservation was 97 feet through. So that's
No, that was
this-
the,
I'm
this was
sorry,
on
this-
last night.
Yes.
Sorry. About 25, 30 feet the driveway is off of the back property line.
And so that's existing, it says those are new units there.
Yeah. The single, the three, and the bigger one.
And the driveway is how far from that property line?
I think it's measured just around 15, yeah, 13, 15.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to come up? Yeah, come on. Just state your name and address and your questions.
Matt Martin, 92 South Worcester. One of the things I'm concerned about is the impact on traffic this is going to have in the area. One of the reasons why my fiance and I decided to buy a house down here was to get as far away from the city and the condos and the apartments as we possibly could, so it's a little bit, disheartening, to be honest, that one's going to be 2 houses down. But people already fly north up Power Street, as you guys probably know. I would like to continue taking my dog on walks. In the future, if we have kids, I would like to be able to, hang out with my kid in my front yard, not have traffic flying around. So what is the projected impact on traffic in the area?
We did a,
So hold on, do you have any further questions? Then we'll have-
Yeah, my other question is about the wetlands area and the flooding. That's something I'm obviously concerned about. I don't want my house flooding out. With the additional runoff because of the property, what impact am I going to see?
So, you just ask us the
Oh,
question
sorry.
into the
I
microphone.
want to know what kind of impact I would see at my house due to runoff from this development.
What unit are you? Are you
92.
I don't think your name is updated on the map, but
It was just a tiny little house in overgrown woods before we bought it.
Can you just open up the full plan? Can you identify where you are on that plan? Sure.
It's still not on.
Oh, really?
You really don't like traffic, huh?
It's still concerning to me.
So was that 3? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That one.
So you
Which one?
The third one over?
Little strip.
This, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Which is a big strip for me.
Yeah.
Hey, we understand.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, I guess while we're on the flooding, we did design this to meet all the stormwater standards. It's under review, so it will be checked. But what we did is we analyzed the existing study points where stormwater is going now, and we analyzed it post to make sure we're not sending any more post than we are pre. So our study points were South Worcester Street, what's going to the wetlands, and what's going to the river, and what's going off-site here. That seemed to be the general flow of where everything was going now. In regards to where he is, this is our drainage basin here, which will infiltrate the entire 100-year storm. The overflow spillway for this, and then it's greater than the 100-year storm, is back here because that's where the water's going, is towards that wetland. So I'm not anticipating.
So why are they experiencing flooding on the street, on those two, both butters we're talking about? They're getting flooding now. Where's that flooding coming from?
I don't know, I mean, it is a large lot, it's wooded, there's some open areas here, but generally woods, you don't get a lot of runoff. Soils aren't bad out there, we've gone through, there's probably 100 test pits back from when Strawberry Fields was done, it's decent soils and the soil groups are good there. As designed, pretty much the high point is right around this existing building. Everything behind that is getting caught in our drainage system, so we're picking up a lot of what was just going through before towards South Worcester Street.
No, it makes, I suspect it would go toward the wetlands, and that's why I'm just concerned as to.
Yeah, no, there was a high point roughly in here. So there was but that's still not a huge chunk of area draining forward, and it's wooded.
And you
And the
said you
traffic.
had submitted traffic, but it also hasn't been reviewed, correct?
Traffic, we did just a basic, MassDOT had done an analysis, which was actually almost right in front of his lot, right in this area a couple of years ago. And I can get the numbers, it was no letter, but it was an average of about 200 cars, I don't want to say peak hour per day, I don't want to ruin that number. But we did look at the IDT numbers for adding 37 units in the multifamily, and it came out to less than 10% increase during peak hours, less than that daily.
Are you having one car or two-car garages?
The garages are 2 cars.
And then there's an additional visitor spot.
Per
essentially
unit.
per unit.
Yeah.
There's enough to accommodate additional visitor spot per unit. And behind the garages, your entry numbers, it could accommodate 2 more cars. It's double wide garage, and you still have another 20 feet before you hit the driveway.
And people are going to park there before they park all the way in visitor
I
parking
would
every
think
single
so.
time.
Yeah.
I would think visitor parking,
Especially over here.
parties
Oh, yeah.
or delivery or something like that. So you essentially have enough room for 5 cars per unit
Okay.
off the street.
So, sir, to answer your question, too, with those answers, that's not the end of either of those topics. We'll be going through them again as well.
Yeah, we're waiting on the review on those.
Just so you don't think that we're going to drop it at that. That's not how it works. All right. Anyone else have questions? Sure.
William Burgess, 16 Smith Street. I grew up at 102. I know the land pretty good. I'm just wondering, is the density being decreased for the special permit? Are they allowing lot lines closer and setbacks and stuff? That's one of my questions. I'm wondering, too, what does this do to the frontage of the existing house at 108? And what about the development of the rest of the land? They said they're using only so many acres. Are they going to come back 3 or 4 years and want to use the rest of the land? Is this cut it all off, or is this just being piecemeal from what they wanted to do years ago? Now, it's instead of 60 units, it's going to be 160 as you add them over the time. And is the grade going to be raised in that back area where they're currently putting the houses? Are they going to bring a couple hundred yards of fill in to raise that, which will put more water and stuff and runoff into my parents' yard? And I do have a concern about the property line being 13 feet from the driveway. And if there's any kind of vegetation or landscaping, or what's going to keep them from seeing now 37 condos and not getting their field flooded out even more, which happens every spring. I think there was a meeting last year I came to, and I had pictures that night of how it was flooded out and the ducks were there. So those are my questions and concerns.
Thank you, sir.
I just have one thing specifically. Ed Burgess is also got on behalf of parents. I think it's a little misleading, where she's saying this is the woods right here. This area right here, this is the abutting property, there's all field, there's a couple of trees there, the woods aren't right here. These pieces of property here, you know, the elevation is a little bit higher than the property over here. This floods out for a long, it's unable to use in the spring at all. It's totally flooded from the street, it gets a little bit higher here, but back here especially, behind these houses, it's very, very wet. It's wet from the high ones there, it's not, but there's, I don't know whether it's not in the wooded area, this is a field area. And they're gonna have to make the elevation higher, that's gonna put even more flooding on that side of the main.
Ned?
Just from my knowledge, that little strip, the 13 feet or whatever that is, we're going to make sure that that's appropriate, and at some point, I'm sure we're going to discuss the landscaping portion of that as well, so. Again, just like the other gentleman's question, that's definitely not the end of that, especially from my perspective at least. And unless you had more, we can have them come up and answer your questions.
It's a question about the frontage. The existing house is would be part of this development.
Okay.
So it's not changing the lot at all. It's just putting additional units on the same lot in the back.
Will the setbacks and stuff, will they be decreased because of the current zoning, the affordable zoning? No change in density?
The density is the
density
change.
determined under the local bylaw.
So if the density changes, if I'm not mistaken, does that increase the amount of affordable housing needed?
That's all been,
The density is what they're allowed to put on that property, so they're allowed to put, was it 30% more than they would otherwise be allowed to put in?
Is it 30%? Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, but
But we're honestly,
the
we're
number of affordable housing is based upon the number of units they put in. So they're putting in 37, so they're putting in 4. So it's not the density, it's the number of units they do determines the amount of affordable housing they have to provide.
So the density's been increased, is that what I've understood?
why don't we,
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
let them respond. I
Yeah.
guess.
I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay. So for density, we're proposing 37 units. Conventionally, you're allowed, we have 30.1 acres of upland. That's all you can use when you count towards what you're allowed. Considering, and lot sizes are dependent upon the number of units you're putting. So if we were just looking at 6-unit buildings, because that's mostly what we have, you can have a 6-unit per 180,000 square feet conventionally. So for 30.1 acres, you could have 7 6-unit buildings conventionally. So it's 42. We have 37, so we're not actually seeking a density increase. I don't know if that clears that up. In building setbacks, we're not asking for any waivers. We're meeting the conventional zoning building setbacks. Did you want to speak about?
Yes.
So, 2 points on that. One, this is a single lot, so there's no methodology to re-subdivide this. There's no way to re-subdivide this into, I'm gonna build a house here, it's a single lot. What we anticipate, what we will also be doing with regard to whatever the direction here is, but everything that's sort of, if you look at this map, everything that's sort of to the top, with the exception likely of some of the area that's over here. All of this, we're planning on putting that in a conservation restriction. So that's, and as a practical matter, it's within the 200-foot buffer anyway, so it's, nothing's going to be developed there. But to the extent that conservation is looking for that, I'm sure we have a plan for that.
Where did they put 60 units?
What's that?
Where did they put 60 units?
Honestly, though, this isn't showing the whole site, so the wetlands pinched together up top, and they had a small, I don't want to say crossing, because they didn't actually go through the wetland, they went right in the narrow strip between, and there is a larger upland area there. It's within the 200-foot riverfront, but they must have been under the, I'm assuming they were under the allowable 10%. But that's how they did it, is they went and accessed that whole back upland area, and they also went all the way here, within the cul-de-sac. So there was a roadway all along here before.
Okay.
That missing upland area where we couldn't do the math.
Oh, I see the pinch point on this.
We do have the cover sheet from the original,
Oh,
if
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
see their old layout.
I see the pinch point you're talking about now,
Yeah.
Tracy. And so then they went up in here.
In that large opening.
Hmm.
And that was where they had more duplexes and
It would have taken forever to get out of it.
multifamily.
On the cart path.
Okay.
So that was the old cover sheet. So these were all the single families, and then they went with one lot, but they ended up here, and that was where they had the multifamilies were all together on one lot.
Okay.
And the septic's in the same area, that's where they have the good soils.
No, you're going to make a conservation restriction on that area
That's
now?
what was asked of us last night, we gotta discuss it with the client, but that's probably the intent.
That upland area up there as well?
Yeah, because in order to get to it, that crossing and the amount of road you'd have to put in and retaining wall to construct there, I don't know if they'd get much out of it anyways.
Yeah, likely the only section, we were discussing this last night, the only section that would likely hold on to is probably a section that's over here. And the reason for that is even though, in Title V, you have to have a alternate.
Reserve area.
Reserve area. If 30 years from now you had a failed septic system and there was no sewer there, it's not likely you don't even want to use the reserve area and you have adequate space to do that, so you can sort of samples would do.
Okay. Do we have any further questions from the audience? No?
The question about the grade bill.
Come up, Steve.
Oh, yeah, the grade.
It is
raising,
gonna
yeah.
be raised. I'm sorry, our layout, sorry. Yes, it is, because essentially we're starting at groundwater elevation in our pond, so we determine the bottom of our pond elevation, and then we have to go back, so that we can drain it into the pond, so everything's done at a minimum height slope to reduce fill as much as possible. But yeah, there is gonna be fill.
Can you say how much fill, how many feet, how many hundred yards?
We haven't done a volume analysis, and again, stuff might change as this gets reviewed. The drainage, but right in here is where it'll come up the highest. So go to the stand level. There we go. So this is where over here is 100 and 103, our proposed is 106 will be ours. Here it's 103, we have 108.
That's 15 feet from the property line?
No, 15 feet was that front entrance driveway.
Driveway goes straight in, right?
Driveway goes straight in.
So it's 15 feet from the back too. Well, 200, 300 feet back is 15 feet.
No, this we measured about 25 feet, I think. We just did that not long ago.
I think
Where
they're
the
talking about
drive-
the lot to the left. Are
Are we in the wrong area?
The lot to the left of the
Over
driveway?
here, we actually measured last night, it's about 90 feet from where the trees will be, about 90 feet of trees, I should say, to where the property line and the stone wall is now in the back of these lots.
Is there any fill
No.
in that area?
It's not.
What-
From the street?
And what about
From the
the-
street to the back of the property line?
Right over here is actually a tiny bit of cut, because that's our basin.
Okay.
What about next to the roadway itself, to the right of the roadway, that being raised?
104 is similar.
But just to restate, Paul, the stormwater bylaw essentially means that you have to maintain everything on the site, correct? So there shouldn't be a net addition in terms of runoff from the site.
Right, correct.
And that's what our peer review engineer is supposed to, will
Right.
confirm for everybody, 'cause-
No off-site.
Yeah, no off-site drainage.
And certainly
So,
not impacting neighbors.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, and again, like the other questions, that's something that's still going to be reviewed, peer-reviewed, and then discussed at length, I'm sure.
And then, Paul, we're using the same peer reviewer as Concom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Good.
yeah, John Cheshire.
Okay. That's great, because then all the information that both boards is getting is.
The same information,
same,
yeah.
Which is great.
All right, anything further from the audience?
Is there any pictures of the, or sketches of the actual building itself? Do you have that? That's a layout of the.
The layout, I don't have an elevation.
Yeah, we're in the preliminary here anyway, so that's something that will come as well. Okay.
And are these 2 or 3-story condos?
I believe they're two-story.
Two-story and the garage is.
Yeah, first floor, second floor.
So the grades are lower below.
So the
The
garage
garage
is,
is first floor, is part of the first floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So-
Garage, and then you have your kitchen living on the first floor.
and then another.
Bedrooms on the second.
And then that's
That's
other
it.
than the eaves.
Yep. Yeah, it's not like a garage under and then you have 2 living floors. Sorry.
All right, do we have anything further from the board here? All right, right, and you're looking to come back in January, you said, you had mentioned? What do we have?
And if for some reason we get to January, we're not, certainly not going to waste your time if we get the peer review, we're not work our way through it substantially.
Okay, we have the 7th and the 28th in January.
I would say the 28th. I know most people don't push for it, but we're going to be back at Concom in December, that's likely to be pushed. I'd rather have more work done than less.
All right, so I guess we can continue this to the 28th. Do we need a vote on that? No, okay. So we'll continue it to the 28th. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I don't think we do we? Joe? No. I know we did it just for show before.
Paul, so when we're coming back in December, so we get that through.
Yeah, Cumberland Farms is
Good luck with
quicker
that.
priority, but
All
I don't
right.
have a great track record on that tonight, I guess.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. All right, so now we have a meeting going on, guys. So now I pushed this to the end here, the Charter Commission. We have tentatively scheduled for the 16th for some representatives from this board to go and discuss some things. I'm still looking for volunteers if anybody wants to go.
When is that, December 6th?
Yeah, what,
December 16th, I think it's a Monday.
Hold on a second.
Right now, I have it open, so I'm going to try to go too.
what time, do you know what time?
I believe it's 7? Is it-
they typically meet at 7.
I'll find out. I believe it's 7.
I'm available as well.
Okay.
I might be available, Steve. I just gotta check sports schedule, but.
Yeah, the 16th we have, so that's good. Yeah, like I said, right now I'm available, but my schedule in December is always crazy, so I'm planning to go. But, so she sent over, I wanted to print this before the meeting so you could all have it, but there's a few questions that they wanted us to go through. I mean, do you all want to go through them now and I can get everybody's input and then we can present it to them? Or would you rather have, Paul email them to you and you can give your input that way? I'll leave it up to you all, how you want to do it.
How many questions? Are we talking like 2?
50.
or-
No,
Yeah.
I thought you were serious.
Scott almost had a heart attack.
Well, no, some of this we can handle. I mean, a brief explanation of the responsibilities of the board, committee and staff. I mean,
Okay, well, those are all, Paul, you probably
Yeah.
already answered all of
I
those
mean-
for us.
Well, but they did hear from me, but
Yeah.
they need to hear from the board.
yeah, so this is more not as a personal, resident, what we think of the government. I mean, as the planning board, this is kind of what they're looking for. What are your thoughts on the way the board works with department staff, how the department head is hired, the level of guidance and the support we receive from the town? I mean, there's nothing earth-shattering. I think it's all pretty straightforward, so, what we're doing that we could change, or what we're currently doing that we should keep doing, stop doing, anything we should be doing. So, I mean, I think it's fairly easy enough to just get it emailed to everybody and get your responses back, and let you think about it, and not to just drop it on you at a meeting like this at the end, 10 o'clock at night. I just want some volunteers, so.
I mean, I certainly
we
can
go.
try to
Okay.
make it.
Orin
I'll
can?
double
Okay,
check
good.
tonight, but I can certainly make every effort.
I mean, maybe we can ask, well, while we're sitting here, are there some major concerns
Yeah.
now about how the board interacts, with administration, or things that, and if anybody else has any ideas that they think need to be addressed? We can-
Yeah, my initial thought was kind of a wish list on what would have happened when I became a board member, and, the responsibilities, not so much time commitment, but, what, personally, and I'm sure you all know this, I would have liked to have had a lot more guidance on town meeting. I know Kevin did his darndest to try to help, and
Where's Kevin tonight?
he's not feeling well. Is it Kevin, or is this his kids? No. Yeah, he couldn't make it tonight. But as far as that, and I think, I don't really know if that reflects on the town government or just procedural.
There was
But-
not a whole, it was here's a welcome packet, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, here's a welcome packet, and Beyond Your Merry Way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, something like, oh, we did have Amy come and address us, but I think that's important.
Yeah.
On a periodic basis.
Yeah.
And maybe we raise questions, and sometimes in an open session in a meeting, it's kind of hard to ask some of the questions about process. And maybe maybe annually of saying, you can save questions and saying, what about this? How can we address this better? When should be here, when shouldn't be here? Things like that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Also, I just think our interaction with the selectmen, where we get something that they want us to respond to, having an open meeting, like some of that stuff may even need to be peer reviewed. How do we know some of these issues? To come back and maybe the timing for, if they want us to sign off on something, the timing for getting that kind of information, if it stays at a town meeting, that's helpful. So we can do it in a thoughtful way, and so it's not one meeting and say, do you approve or don't approve? If you have questions, how do you deal with them? It's just not time.
Yeah.
And then I think that maybe we ought to, also, my own self is, when we have significant bylaw changes, and we're gonna be looking at them, what's the best way to deal with them? Do we deal with them, where the administration comes up and tries to fill in the holes where there are holes? I guess there are gonna be some bigger issues where we start dealing with the village center issues. It's a whole new bylaw. I mean, how are we gonna address that? Is it gonna be, someone's gonna pull something off of a file and say, let's try this and mark it up? Or are we going to take it a little bit more aggressively and get involved with it? And I don't know myself, I don't have the answers, but those are questions that I think the board and the town need to wrestle with. Because there's some, there's a master plan, there's some new bylaws, how are we going to get to that? And what's the process going to be? I don't want to get to the point where we go through something and the finance says something else.
Yeah.
Maybe we have some more interaction with them beforehand, more interaction with the Conservation Commission, so we can.
I think more interaction in general between the boards. I haven't had any interaction with any of the other boards personally.
Yeah, and that's.
And how many months have I been chair?
Yeah, and that.
Yeah, not at all. So that to me is a major problem.
Yeah, and I think we have the obligation to give them notice, and then they have 10 days to respond. They respond once, then we have a hearing that goes on for 6 months. The project that's changed, when do we go back to them? And when do we say, this is the change project, do you have any more comments? Or do we keep them in the loop as we're doing it? I don't know the answer to that, but there seems to be a disconnect from my perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do as a board as far as scheduling more meetings to go over, the new laws and scheduling the council to be here and explain things to us as to, what questions do we ask or what particular bylaws are going to impact particular projects. I think it would save a lot of time going back and forth. The interaction with the boards is a big one too. And initial training, I mean, God bless you, Scott, you just kind of got thrown into.
Joe's
You
training all of us.
You did kind of get to sit and watch for a while.
Not me, not my.
Yeah, nothing can really prepare you for this, but.
Me for training.
You're a tough grader, dude.
Yeah, and this doesn't reflect poorly on either of these two. These guys have been phenomenal.
I have to do a better job, and in fact, we've had conversations about what we can do better with bylaw changes so that planning board gets involved more proactively earlier, all the way through, a process, all the way through, having you or any future chair, prepared to, present the material. We have presentations. I took that to heart, what happened the last one. And look,
I'm going to stop.
I just read an article about, people have to look beyond the mistakes, but learn to accept them and learn from them. And I've made millions, and I've learned a lot. So, but that's one where we have to start, we have to just map it out from the beginning all the way to the end for a successful project. So yeah, that's a big thing. And we have to start talking about making that, those changes and making it as effective and efficient as possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of internal board stuff like that, and I'm going on the record again to say that is not your fault, Paul. You know, if it is, then it's as much my fault as it is yours, because, you know, both of us could have done something different, but I think knowing ahead of time certain things would help, and I think that has to do with training and.
I think affording the time to have these discussions.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of it too, is that, you know, the finance committee's meeting like, you know, the night after ours, and nobody's even seen or heard what happened at our meeting, and they're trying to respond to that quickly.
Yeah.
And when you get in the crunch, and we're all trying to do the best that we possibly can do, you're gonna start to have like some missteps in that.
Yeah.
And I think if we have earlier coordination, earlier
Right.
discussions, whether it's with FinCom, Board of Selectmen, Concom, Zoning Board of Appeals, so that we know what they need too, Paul, you
Right.
know, like.
Right.
And that's why we took that
what's
step
desired
of
them.
scheduling the meetings
Yeah,
further out, so we can
right.
try to plan that a
Right.
I
little
think we're
better, yeah.
taking those steps to do
That-
those
that's-
things,
Right.
but
So
we've-
that's
I've
part of it.
Started to map out the timeframes for it. I
Yeah.
don't know, you know, the tough part is we don't know when the May town meeting is, but
Yeah.
I have it mapped out so that your second meeting, official meeting, would be should be a couple weeks before town meeting.
Yeah.
But then we also need to be doing something earlier in, January, February, so that you all see the drafts. Like,
Yeah.
if we do the zoning bylaw changes, you need to see it earlier. Because one of the things that happened, you made changes at your last meeting a couple days before, which you had every right to do. We had a tight turnaround. Anyway, I mean, we can go down that, but
Process, I think you ended up going first to the selectmen. The selectmen approved going forward, then it came to us as a mandate to approve a bylaw, as us being involved with it. It was coming from the planning board.
It was the timing, it was the
And
timing.
We weren't involved
Yeah.
in.
Right.
Just, and it wasn't, I mean, most of the stuff we all agreed to have happen, but if we were involved before it went to the selectmen, then it coming back from them saying, okay, final approval, then we have an open hearing, then we hear from everybody else, because we've already given our input. But there, we were doing both at the same time.
Yeah, that one in particular, yeah, we talked about it, and again, I'll take the blame for not closing it that night, but, because we made so many changes to that particular item, that I didn't feel comfortable even asking you guys to try to close it unless we saw the full document. And again, that goes back to scheduling. If we had scheduled that a week sooner, or a meeting sooner, it could have got to the selectmen first, we could have, so, again, that has a lot to do with scheduling and timing, and I personally, I don't think I've done a good job with when we had a meeting, we could cancel a meeting, what was it, last month or whenever it was? Those meetings we should keep, and we should go over internal items, like this, so that we can keep moving on things, so.
So just restate again regarding training. The Citizens Planner Training Collaborative is a wonderful resource. Again, Warren and I, we went to that annual in March up at Holy Cross. They do have trainings going on through the fall. It's pretty, they have the trainings in the fall, so right now they're in the heat of it. So I'd given you all a link a few weeks ago. I'd put a lot of their material in a resource in Dropbox for you, so it's always a good resource. That's always a good folder to look at for resources. But we have budget for training. I mean, it's the planning board's budget. So if you want to take the training, then the one you reimbursed me for was $35 for the training. And they do focus. Their big target are planning boards in the ZBA. It's really much more geared toward you than it. And it does help. Certainly for me, that's been a great resource in my year and a half here. So that is a good training.
What also I found helpful is even meeting other people, other board members. I mean, they had a luncheon or had a breakfast, and sitting around and you throw out issues and, what'd you do with the marijuana law? And they were telling me about all the problems they were having, or what they did. You really get more insight. You really get some questions you can come back to the board with. What do you use for this kind of system?
Right.
You get a lot of information other than the program situation.
Oh, it's definitely good to meet board members from other towns, yeah, absolutely.
And then they're a good resource.
Absolutely.
What are you doing with this? And then you can give them a call. One of the things I think, what about something like, and I don't know if you could actually do it, like a subcommittee, or like if we know you're working on the master plan bylaw, and you're saying, I'm going to be working with Nicole on Thursdays, and so people can drop by and give you input, or either it's a subcommittee, or you don't have to have a formal meeting, where we're just really throwing things against the wall.
I'm fairly certain we can create a subcommittee.
I don't know if that would help, rather than, you trying to go through, a 10-page bylaw with us at an open meeting.
Yeah, I believe I tried to create a subcommittee to go through the bylaws.
The handbook.
The handbook,
But
yeah.
and I never,
Yeah, and then we just kind of, and that's another, I mean,
Just getting
again,
together, but.
that's something that should be on our agenda
But I'm
for,
thinking, working with Paul, so he gets a
Yeah.
little bit of our input, and then we can, if there's an issue that we think ought to come back here, we can raise that as it's being developed.
Mm-hmm.
Or if he's meeting on Tuesday, you can stop by and say, what's the status of that, let me take a look at it. Something and I don't know, maybe we have to talk to Amy, what we can do informally.
Right.
Because sitting around here at an open meeting is kind of hard to go through a 20-page bylaw.
yeah, one thing that as far as changes, I think that, that they need some more help. You guys the two of them are handling so much right now, and I know, it's a question for FinCom and for the selectmen, but that's definitely something that needs to happen.
Well, we can raise that with the Charter Commission.
Yeah, exactly.
I think distribute the questions to answer your original.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so Orin and I will go, and tentatively Julie.
Yeah, I'll double check.
Depending on schedule.
I'll
Okay.
email you guys and let you know.
Okay.
That here?
Yes, it is here.
And if it's only the three of you, I don't think we need to post this as a public. You don't have a quorum, so we don't need to post an agenda for this.
Yeah, and initially I was trying to do just a combined meeting, but that wouldn't work. Unless you want to all come.
Well, if someone else does, let me know, because that puts you in a quorum.
Yeah.
And we
Four
would
of
need
us.
to,
Yeah.
all right, so we would just need to post the agenda. We could just do it on the safe side anyway, but.
Yeah, well, right now,
You may as well put it in the.
Two and
queue.
maybe a three.
Yeah. It's 2.5 right now. Not that you're,
That's fine, I'll take it.
all right.
For the sake of not thinking about it, I would just give it to the clerk now.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
if it gets posted, didn't need to, oh well. We've over-notified.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We'll get it done.
Yeah.
And
It's
our-
the 16th, so we have time.
Trying to avoid
Our next
processes.
fairly late meeting, I want to maybe put on there that planning board issues that we want to talk. I would like to have kind of a list of things internally that we need to start working on, and during light meetings, or if there's a meeting that should be canceled, we can talk about some internal stuff. But that's it.
Well, the stuff that came up at the last meeting, the renovation, the modifications of the bylaws, where are we with that? Are we going to be coming back to that? The things that were, the bylaw changes that were voted down.
The what got rejected. That training I went to a few weeks ago on bylaw changes, what I learned was, as the planning board recommended for, it can go forward again. It's not held up like a lot, it held up for 2 years if it fails at town meeting. I have to confirm that with Amy, but I distinctly saw that in our training, that it can come back. So.
And we'll
need
have
to-
handouts, we'll have highlighted copies, we'll have color-coded tabs, we'll make sure it's easy to read.
Right. Certain things, again, like accessory structures, keeps coming back to the ZBA, and we're getting 5,000 square foot accessory structures that are larger than the primary.
And I won't have to wear my hockey pads to the next meeting, so.
I think if there's no edits on the floor, you'll be fine.
Well, that's why we talked about, if there are edits like that, then, because I didn't have the authority, I thought, to not move
We
it.
voted on that, I think.
After.
Oh, did we?
But then I was reminded, we may have voted on it before, but at the night,
Yeah.
I was also told one thing behind, well, that's a whole nother
Give it a
issue.
moment.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll get it.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah. I know what you're going to say.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.